It's go time, sir.
Ready to go? All right. All right, well, we'll wait another minute here for people to come in and folks to get on their computers or their television. I take it we're still ready to go. All right, very good. We've hit the bewitching hour here, so let's start. Well, good evening, everybody. It is Tuesday, November 21st, 2023. It is 7 o'clock, 7 p.m. on the dot. This is the Edina City Council meeting for this particular date, 2 days before Thanksgiving. Hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving that are in the audience and were listening in. Some of you came in a little bit later after Director Benarott talked a little bit about how the meeting would be conducted. And so before I call the meeting to order, just a reminder for people that have been here for a few minutes or that just wandered in, we do these meetings on a hybrid basis. And that means that there are going to be folks in our community watching on cable TV or on their computers at edinamn.gov live meetings or on facebook.com/edinamn. And they can participate just like folks in the audience can participate in appropriate circumstances. So there's two chances to address the council tonight. One is in community comment and one is in the single public hearing matter that we have. In community comment, just a reminder that you cannot address anything that's on the agenda this evening or scheduled for a future public hearing in your community comments or your concerns. But feel free to come up and talk to us about anything else that's on the agenda. I know many of you in the audience are probably here to hear what I would characterize as a discussion around organized hauling, and that's exactly what it is. It's a discussion. And I thought the brochure that the haulers put out was very accurate in its description of what was going to be taking place tonight. Unfortunately, some folks thought there was a decision on organized versus continuing the system we have tonight. We may go one direction or another on that in terms of advancing that idea. If it does get advanced, we're going to be having a lot of public discussion about it before we get to any final conclusion on it. So with providing that information, I'm going to call the meeting to order and ask our clerk, Sharon Ellison, to call the roll. Clerk Ellison.
Councilmember Agnew. Here. Councilmember Jackson. Here. Councilmember Pierce.
Here.
Councilmember Risser.
Here.
Mayor Hovland.
Here. Next is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we've got a form of meeting agenda in front of us this evening, council members. Is there anyone on either council or staff that wishes to modify the meeting agenda in any form or fashion? Is there a motion to approve the meeting agenda as published?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by member Jackson, second by member Pierce to approve the meeting agenda as published. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adopting the meeting agenda as published, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. And now we are at community comment. So folks, if you have a concern that you want to address with the council that's not on the matter, that pertains to a matter not on the agenda this evening, feel free to come forward. And then we're going to go with folks in the audience first, and then we'll turn to the virtual world and see if anybody wants to share a concern with the council. A reminder, you'll have 3 minutes. We use this lighting system that's on each podium, and when you see the yellow light come on, you'll have 30 seconds to wrap up your comments. We like to make sure everybody gets treated the same here in terms of their comments, and so that's the reason we're using that lighting system, to achieve that fundamental level of fairness in terms of the time in front of the council. So does anybody in the audience wish to address, and let's get that phone number up on the screen too, for people that might be waiting to call in so they've got that information in front of them. There's a 786 number, there's a conference PIN number that you punch in, and then you'll get to an operator, and the operator will bring you into Director Benarat, and then you'll press *1 to speak. And so now we'll go back to our residents that have a concern, and we'll start with one of our fellow residents right now.
Okay, hello, Janie Weston, 6130.
That microphone doesn't seem to be working that well.
Can you hear me now?
That's better.
Okay, I'm like a cell phone commercial. Janie Weston, 6136 Brookview Avenue. Regarding 4404 Valley View Road, the former Burley's site, I have some more information. In looking up what Xcel Energy has on their website, and let's get this on the overhead. Okay. I was not exactly correct on what I said last week about the side setback and the safety, safe distance to be maintained away from power lines for buildings and people working on buildings. 12 feet was what I had been told back in 2006 in relation to the shop my husband and I were building, probably because we have 2 second-floor windows on the backside facing the power lines. The Xcel Energy minimum is 10 feet. I don't know if any of you maybe had a chance to look at this in the last 2 weeks, but 10 feet away from power lines is what Xcel Energy requires, whether it's horizontally, vertically, in an arc, whatever. And they have, that's from their website, just printed it off this afternoon. And then here's a diagram giving you a pretty good illustration of what that is. And I'd be happy to leave this with you, so you can pass that on. I had requested in an email response to an email that I had a response of from City Hall people to perhaps have an Xcel Energy person come and explain this to people, because it's good public information for safety. The building going up right now it has a 5-foot setback on the west side, 7 foot on the north. If you do a little triangulation, it's about 8 feet 2 inches to where this cantilever, 6-inch cantilever is. And that's obviously less than 10. Just today, when I was driving by, this I took 2 weeks ago, but now the roof is going on. There was a guy with a safety harness with his feet on this level, leaning backwards as he's nailing boards into place. His back was 3 feet from this power line right here. And that is pretty alarming to see. It's not safe. So for future decisions on setback variances, this is something everyone has to be aware of. This is just plain safety, and we don't want to see someone get electrocuted, killed, whatever. Not a good way to go. And I can leave these with you.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Weston. I think our staff is our staff's working on this issue, I think, with the developer and with Xcel. So, but thanks for your concern. Anyone else?
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Zickert.
My name is Ralph Sickert. I reside at 4311 Cornelia Circle. Mayor, council members, my message tonight is for residents of Edina. As the following concerns have been shared multiple times with the council, Mr. Neal and his staff, which is exactly why some of us show up for public comment. So, residents of Edina, let's talk about your recent utility bill, specifically the water usage portion, and the city's lack of transparency, what I would call an unwillingness to share what's behind the curtain. Staff stated it had 4 goals for the 2023 water utility rates. One of those goals was to increase affordability for low-volume customers. It makes a great soundbite, but it didn't happen. The so-called $2 to $10 reduction in the water usage portion for low-volume residents was more than offset by the increase in sewer and stormwater rates. If that's not a lack of transparency, I don't know what is. That's the curtain that has to be lifted. Another one of the city's goals was to incentivize water conservation. Again, it makes a great soundbite, but how does reducing the water rate for 96% of all commercial accounts, many using over 1 million gallons per year, support conservation? In fact, most commercial accounts saw double-digit decreases in their water rates, with some decreasing as much as 23% year over year. All but the largest 15 commercial accounts saw their bills reduced. And even those top 15 only saw a 3% increase. Conservation? With the significant disconnect between the city's stated goals and reality, staff has not been transparent with residents. In addition, nowhere was it made clear to the council or to residents that, while commercial accounts were seeing significant cost reductions, rates were going up for Edina families. All mid-level and higher residential users saw their rates go up by as much as 40%. And because of the city's failure to understand the capability of their new software, all multifamily accounts saw their water rates increase by over 30%. The top rate for residents is $6.08 for usage over 24,000 gallons. Meanwhile, commercial accounts only pay $3.77 for usage over 200,000 gallons. That's almost 10 times the usage at just over half the rate. Residential and multifamily voters deserve more equity when it comes to how rates are set, and all residents deserve more transparency and accountability.
Thank you, Mr. Zickert. Do you want to submit your written comments? So we'll certainly want to look into this. I know there's a year calculations, and we'll want to check it against what our finance people say and others say in the city staff system about this apparent disparity. Thank you for coming tonight. Anybody else on a matter of concern to them? Yes, sir.
WHE.
Oh,
WHE. 4246 Valley View
hold on.
Road.
Let's wait. Let's get this microphone working right, because it's hard to hear you, and then it's all garbled.
Testing.
Just move a little back from it.
Just stay a little bit
A
back.
little back.
There you go.
That's what my wife says. When we address the council
Why
here,
don't you give us start from the beginning again, and give us your name and address, please.
W.H. Nieder, 4236 Valley View Road.
Thank you.
Servants' quarters of Edina. I would like to know, since everyone that has to address the Soviet here and give our addresses, where are your addresses? I've been on the city's website. I can't find your addresses. I can't send you a letter.
You can send a letter to City Hall. I don't know, our addresses may be on the website. They're on the website. Yeah, I think our addresses are there. Our
I've
phone
never
numbers
seen
are
them.
there.
They are?
Yeah,
Your home address?
I would assume so.
You assume, you don't know?
Yeah, no, I'm going to ask our communications director right now, but the reason we ask for your address is because as we try to have a complete record of testimony, it's good to have people's address plus their name, so that we know. There you go.
All right, I'll check the website again. Thank you.
All right. Okay, anybody else? All right, let's go to the virtual world and see if we had anybody. Nobody? Okay. What we usually do every meeting is we turn to our city manager for a response to community comments that were made in the prior meeting. And I'll turn now to our city manager, Scott Neal, to see if he had any comments that he needed to respond to from the last meeting.
Thank you, Your Honor, members of council. We had two folks who participated in community comment at our November 8th meeting. First one was Janie Weston, and Janie talked about the same issue she talked about tonight, 4404 Valley View Road and the electrical access. We have passed that information on to our own building division and also on to Xcel Energy. Xcel Energy is the entity that enforces their easement rights, right? So they have a big point of leverage. If you don't play by their rules, they will not provide you power. There are some options that are at play here. Problem one is probably burying the power line in that area. So there's some discussion going on between the property owner and Xcel Energy and our building staff to kind of work this out.
Yeah, well, I mean, just a comment. I mean, it does seem like, and Ms. Weston brought it up, there's a 5-foot setback. The building is on the line for the 5-foot setback, but at least the information she had from Excel says they want it 10 feet back. So it's a little bit incongruity between what Excel requires and what we require from a setback standpoint, and that's something to be resolved.
Right. The other person who spoke was Owen Michelson. He asked a question about school district elections. I responded to it that evening that we have an agreement that binds both parties that impacts the 2023 elections, and we're moving forward with calculating what our costs were for that election, and we should be making some progress on that by the end of next week.
All right, very good. Does that prompt any questions from council members for Manager Neal? All right. Let's move on then to the consent agenda. I know that Member Jackson has one item she wants to remove from the consent agenda. It's a calendaring item with religious holidays. It's item 6K. With the exception of 6K, is there anyone else on the council that wishes to remove an item from the consent agenda? Okay. Hearing nothing, is there a motion to adopt the items on the consent agenda in a single motion with the exception of 6K?
So moved. Second.
Member Jackson moves, Member Agnew seconds the adoption of the items on the consent agenda in a single motion with the exception of item 6K. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the motion as stated say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried. Motion carries. And now let's move to item 6K that Member Jackson wanted to talk about, which is potential approval of the 2024 calendar of meeting and religious observance dates. Member Jackson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I got an email yesterday from a resident who was concerned that there are two Jewish holidays that are we allow to have city meetings on those days, and that's Sukkot and Shavuot. And she was concerned that those were pretty high holidays, and we're not observing them, or we have two things. So we've got the days of significance, which we're not doing religious holidays, but then we're trying not to have city meetings on religious days. And we want to be inclusive, but I also know the calendar is very tight and very difficult. So what I'd like to do is take this off and bring it back at our next meeting and kind of consult with people as to whether we want to include those as religious holidays on our calendar.
Happy to do that.
All right, very good. Do you care to move the postponement of this matter to our December meeting?
Yes, I'll move the postponement of this matter to our December meeting.
All right, just the first meeting in December. Let's look at the calendar here.
December 5th, I think.
December 5th, yeah.
A second.
All right, we got a motion and second to move item 6K to the December 5th City Council meeting agenda. Anything further on that matter? All those in favor of moving that matter to the December 5th agenda, say aye. 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 Opposed? Carried. All right, now we are moving on past the consent agenda and on to special recognitions and presentations. We've got one item in this category tonight. That's followed by public hearings where we have just one matter, and then we've got some reports and recommendations matters to go through. But here is the sole item on the special recognitions and presentations portion of the agenda. It's a proclamation designating November 25th, which is this coming Saturday, 2023, as Small Business Saturday in Edina. And here's the way the resolution reads. Whereas there are more than 2,400 businesses located in the city of Edina, and according to the United States Census, over 96% of all firms with paid employees in Hennepin County have fewer than 100 employees in their businesses and are classified as small business. And whereas small businesses are located in each of Edina's commercial districts, including 44th and France, 50th and France, 70th and Cahill Business Industrial Park, Grandview, Lincoln Drive, Southdale, and Greater Southdale, Pentagon Park, Washington Avenue, and Wooddale Valley View neighborhoods. And whereas according to the United States Small Business Administration, small businesses account for 2/3 of the nation's employment growth. And whereas 79% of consumers surveyed in the 2021 Consumer Insights Survey understand the importance of supporting small businesses located in the community. And whereas for many local residents, the Thanksgiving holiday kicks off a season of gathering, dining, shopping, and experiencing arts and culture, and consumers know that supporting small business independently owned has a positive social and economic and environmental impact on the community. And whereas the SBA, as well as other public and private organizations across the country, have recognized and promoted the Saturday after Thanksgiving as Small Business Saturday. And whereas the City of Edina celebrates our local small businesses and recognizes the vital contributions these businesses make to our local economy and to the overall health and vibrancy of our community, now therefore be it resolved that the Edina City Council does hereby proclaim November 25th, 2023 as Small Business Saturday in the City of Edina and urges the residents and guests of our community to support and small businesses and merchants located in each of Edina's commercial districts on this day and throughout the year. Is there a motion to adopt the proclamation?
So moved.
Is there a second? Member Agnew? All right. Member Jackson moves. Member Agnew seconds the adoption of the proclamation designating this coming Saturday, November 25th, 2023, as Small Business Saturday in the City of Edina. Any further discussion regarding the proclamation? All those in favor of adopting the proclamation say aye. 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 Opposed? Carried. The proclamation is adopted, and we've got Shirley Loberg from the Edina Chamber of Commerce with us this evening. I'm going to ask her to come forward. She may have a few remarks she wants to make about the vitality of our small businesses. And I'm going to hand her this proclamation so she can take it over. Keep the parts City Hall this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm Shelley Loberg. I'm the current president of the Edina Chamber of Commerce and Explore Edina. I have been privileged to work in this community for over 9 years, and it's my privilege to represent the small business community. Please come out and support your local small businesses during the holiday season, but not just during the holiday season. All year round, your purchases in our local businesses matter very, very much. And we have an amazing tree lighting going on at 50th and France this Saturday. The festivities start at 11 a.m. And I know there's some festivities, like a ceremony starting around 5:05 right by the tree, which I'm sure the mayor will be a part of. I will be there as well. But again, please come out and support your local businesses. When you walk through their front door, you're impacting families, and that impacts our community. Thank you for your consideration and for the proclamation this evening. I appreciate it.
Yes, thanks for being with us this evening to accept the proclamation. My pleasure. And I think for those of you in the audience and listening in, 4:30, as I recall, on Saturday is the tree lighting ceremony. If you haven't been down for that with kids or grandkids or just down at 50th and France, it's really it's a great little event, and we gather up all the kids that are there and have them talk about what they're thankful for, and then we do a countdown to lighting the tree, and it's always a great time for everybody. So I encourage you all to be there. And again, Ms. Loberg, thanks for being here this evening. That takes care of the special recognitions and presentations portion of the agenda. And now we're going to move on to the singular public hearing matter that we have this evening that involves an easement we have out at Galleria. And we're going to talk about moving that easement. And this is something that people can participate in terms of testimony, either that are here in the audience or listening in from home. And our Director of Engineering, Chad Milner, is going to introduce the matter.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. We received an application to consider a vacation of transit easements, but it's more of a vacation and create new ones right near it. So we want to talk about that. It's on the Galleria property between 69th and 70th Street, and the ask is embodied in resolution number 2023-85. So this is the existing transit easement. It runs between 70th Street and 69th Street. The hatched area with the green arrows, the area that's being requested to be vacated. And this shows you a little bit better where it falls on the property. So if you're familiar with it, you leave the roundabout on 70th, heading north, you go underneath the building, and right when you exit from underneath the building there, by the green arrow right here, that's where the transit easement today is, closer to the building, and they're requesting to move it over approximately 10 feet to the east. So you can see where it's just that northern portion of that easement. Here's the requested. So you can see the angle of that easement just changes. Instead of heading with a slight direction to the west, they just want to shift it slightly to the east within the parking lot for a project that they have going forward. The project that was approved by the Planning Commission for a setback variance, which doesn't need to be in front of the City Council, but it was approved by the Planning Commission last Wednesday night, was for this access road. So they have a project here. We want to build a patio shown here on the east side of the building, and they don't want to build that patio within the existing transit easement. So they're asking just to shift that over. We would not vacate that easement until they gave us the legal descriptions, the new easement of that shifted over easement. So we don't have any issues. We're making it contingent on new easements. We've reached out to the private utilities, and they have no concerns with doing this action. So we did solicit some public input on the Better Together Edina webpage. No public comments were submitted on the website. So we're asking for you to vacate this transit easement tonight, contingent on new easements, and approve that resolution number 2023-85, and I can stand for any questions.
All right, questions for Director Milner? Anybody? Good, concise explanation. I think, the facts are important, of course. All right, so this is a public hearing matter, and that means that people can testify regarding their thoughts on whether this easement should be shifted to the east 10 feet. And so I'm going to open it up for public testimony now to see if anybody in the audience wishes to come forward and testify regarding this matter. I see Sergeant Johnson from Hines is here to help us answer any questions that are pertinent if necessary. But if anybody else wishes to come forward and testify regarding this matter, please feel free to come forward now and give us your name and address. Okay, I'm not hearing anything and not seeing anybody come forward. Anybody online that wishes to testify regarding this matter?
I don't have anyone on the line, but because there is a delay in the broadcast, I'd recommend that we wait 1 minute to give people an opportunity to call in. My clock shows that it's 7:28. I'll come back to you at 7:29 or when I have a caller, whichever is first.
All right, very good. Thanks, Director Benarott.
It is now 7:29, and I still don't have a caller, so I think it's safe for you to move forward.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Director Milner, for coming back up. When I look at Resolution 2023-85, I see the contingency embodied in the first part of the resolution that the following described transit easement is hereby vacated contingent on the property owner establishing a new transit easement. And then there's a lengthy legal description. Is that the legal description for the one to be vacated or the one to be established?
Vacated. Yep.
All right, so
It's a separate document that we will get the legal description and exhibits, and they will sign off on that, and then we'll file that through our attorney at the county.
all right. So why wouldn't we be doing the establishment of the new easement at the same time we'd be vacating the old one?
I may ask city attorney to answer that question.
I'm looking at you, Mr. City Attorney.
Well, Mayor, I think that would probably be best practice if we could get the legal description. If we could get them to have the signed conveyance of the new easement prior to vacation, that'd be ideal. I mean, this is clear that it's contingent, so we wouldn't record the vacation of the existing easement until we got the new one.
Typically, we get those descriptions and stuff after the approvals, and we work with the applicant to finish the legal paperwork at that point.
Yeah, so the point I'm getting at is, are you comfortable with the notion that this is a contingent sort of vacation, that and the new one will follow suit?
This is what we've done with other easements of this.
It's a regular practice?
Yes, yep.
Okay.
Typically just vacated, made it contingent. We've worked with the applicant and moved those forward.
I'm going to get Sergeant Johnson on the record for this one. Come forward, please. Tell us your name and your address, and I want to make sure I get your commitment that, on behalf of Heinz Company, the manager, that this,
Good evening,
and the owners, that this will be
Mayor
done.
and City Council. Sergeant Johnson, 2120 Weber Hills Road, Wayzata. I'm with Heinz. We're the property manager and development manager of Edina Galleria, and we will cooperate and have this be contingent, that this vacation will be contingent on issuing a new easement slightly to the east, as Chad pointed out.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's what we need. All right, is there a motion to adopt resolution? Oh, let's close the public hearing first. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved. Second.
Member Jackson moves, Member Agnew seconds the closing of the public hearing in this matter. Any further discussion? All those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And now, is there a motion to adopt resolution 2023-85, vacating the transit easement at 3501 Galleria?
So moved.
Second.
Member Pierce moves, Member Jackson seconds the adoption of resolution 2023-85. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of resolution 2023-85, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. The resolution 2023-85 is adopted. All right, that's our last public hearing matter, and now we are going to the reports and recommendations portion of the agenda. And the first matter we have here is for folks in the audience. If there's a donation to the City of Edina, or a proposed donation to the City of Edina by state law, we have to approve that on a supermajority basis to accept those proposed donations. So we usually have donations every meeting, and we've got one this meeting, and it's embodied in Resolution 2033-87. And so I'm going to ask anybody on the council if they care to move the adoption of Resolution 2023-87, and then I'll explain what it is.
So moved.
Member Jackson moves, Member Pierce seconds the adoption of Resolution 2023-87, which accepts a donation on behalf of the City of Edina. Any further discussion? All those in favor on the council of adopting Resolution 2023-87, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carried. Resolution 2023-87 is adopted. And for information, the donors' names will be posted on our city website, but this is to the Park and Rec Department, and a really generous gift by Mark and Jackie Nolan from our community of $10,000 for three benches at Bredesen Park. 3 benches at Bredesen Park, I'm sure, in honor of loved ones that have passed away. So thank you to the Nolans for that very, very generous gift. Now let's move on to the second matter in this portion of the agenda, and that's a matter our Community Development Director, Carrie Teague, has. The Planning Commission approved a sign variance for this new apartment building going up kitty corner from City Hall. So they could have a sign up on the side of the building facing south that was illuminated at night. And some of our residents appealed that decision, and so we're here to decide what we think about the appeal this evening, because it was continued from 2 weeks ago, and Director Teague will walk us through the matter, and then we will have, we've got our appellant, Tom Tessman, or one of our residents, available virtually for questions, and also the applicant, Bjorn Bowman, who represents the sign company, not the builder, not the owner of the building, is here for answering questions as well. So turning now to Director Teague.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Members of the City Council. Excuse me. So you have two resolutions in front of you. One that would uphold the Planning Commission decision to approve the variance, and the second to overturn and deny the variance. So as mentioned, Mr. Bowman, on behalf of the Mason Green Apartments, did receive a variance. It is to locate that sign on the side of the building, 40 square feet, facing the south, facing the freeway. The findings for that approval are listed in the approval resolution. That includes that the proposed sign is reasonable given the size and scale of the building and the number of street frontages to assist vehicles on Highway 100 to identify the building. There are circumstances that are unique to the property, the location of the site on Highway 100, and the elevation change, and that the proposal wouldn't alter the essential character of the neighborhood. There are other signs in this district, including the OLG, which received a variance for a sign that faces the freeway, and the Eden 100 building also has a sign. As mentioned, Tom Tessman appealed the decision and made a very well put together presentation to the City Council with an argument for denial of the variance. And within that resolution, those findings include that the proposal does not meet the standards to grant a variance, that the tenant could still install a single 12 square foot sign on one side of the building to meet our city code requirements, that the proposal does not meet the three-factor practical difficulty test within the variance to justify the new sign. The building is allowed signage under current code. The site is not unique. Additional lighted signage is not needed, as the building is highly visible from Highway 100, and guests can easily find the building using GPS. So with that, as mentioned, Mr. Tessman is on the line with us to answer any questions you may have of him, and I believe Mr. Bowman is in the audience as well.
Okay, good. I'm thinking that instead of having somebody make a motion one way or the other on this matter, that we have a little council discussion on it, because we've had a couple weeks to think about it. And then I think that might drive us towards just making a single motion, so we don't go through the effort of having one motion attempted and fail. And so I think it would be better to have the discussion first. So, if anybody wants to lead off on the discussion, Member Risser?
I would like to thank our resident Tom Tessman for coming forward with his concerns. And when I watched the Planning Commission review this request and approve it, I was very uncomfortable, because the size of the sign is one where it's not just a physical change. I think it's a functional change. And so that's a policy change. And this is a very large building that is very visible from Highway 100. I don't think people are going to have a hard time finding it. The arguments that the situation is unique were never supported by why those unique factors would befuddle someone trying to find the building. And essentially, it is, located where Wilson and Eden come together. It's the big building. You can't miss it. And I think this illuminated sign has more to do with branding than it does with guiding people to it. I also think about all of the other apartment complexes that we have in Edina that do not have large illuminated signs on them at this point. And I think this really opens up the door to really changing the way Edina looks. And we haven't even had that discussion. And so I really am grateful for Mr. Tessman for coming forward and appealing that decision. And I do really think that this is a situation where it should have come to council. It shouldn't have had a resident have to make that motion. So I would really be in favor of denying or, appealing, what do I want to say?
Granting the appeal.
Granting the appeal.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Councilmember Agnew, I thought, everybody raised some excellent points when we had a discussion a couple of weeks ago. I thought yours were quite interesting as you were thinking about people living in the building as well.
Yes.
So, Councilmember Agnew.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I've been reflecting on this, I think it's important to me to really recognize the role of the Planning Commission and then the role that they played. So I appreciate Member Risser reflecting on that. But I think that my take is typically, unless I see something that really stands out to me as being that I don't agree with the decision that they made, I typically want to uphold what they have determined as the Planning Commission. And within this, I don't see it really changing the aesthetics of the neighborhood. And I know that was one of the major things that was a part of this appeal. When you think about the light, I know we had some conversations about that. I think that we as a city could, if that's what we're nervous about, implement no lights after 10 p.m. or something from an illumination perspective of the sign. But ultimately, there's going to be light cast from this as a building, so that part of it isn't concerning to me. And I do think that the unique circumstances of it being on Highway 100, the elevation changes, and really thinking through kind of the complexity of the roads in that area is a reason to have that additional signage. So I would be in favor of upholding the Planning Commission decision.
All right, very good. Thank you. Member Jackson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I really had a hard time with this as a wayfinding sign. I really think it is an advertisement. And I've said this once, I've said it a dozen times, I really want the Planning Commission to look at what our signage along Highway 100 is. I just don't find this to be a function of the land. I think it's, would be lovely for them to advertise, but I don't think that that's a reason to grant a variance. I'm uncomfortable with it. And I don't know, I've never noticed the OLG sign driving around. It doesn't jump out at me, but I know this would jump out at me. It was going down 100. I find this to be quite different. So I'm not in favor of this. I'm in favor of the appeal from Ms. Blake and Mr. Tessman.
Very good. Yeah. Councilmember Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I was absent from the last council meeting. However, believe it or not, from Alabama, I watched the entire council meeting. And so I thought the deliberation on this was excellent. And so hats off to my colleagues. As I reflected on this, I felt like we were talking about two aspects of this. And there are two things that stood out for me. One, I did get the sense that this was more about branding than anything else. And so that'd be the first thing I would say. Second, it's tough to be on the Planning Commission when things come before them that require so much subjectivity. And so the example I'll give, changing the makeup of the community, like that's a subjective thing. And it's tough for me, if I don't live in that community, to even judge whether it is or it's not impacting the look and feel of the community, of that specific community. So I actually have to kind of raise up a little bit, which is what I did. And I thought about there are communities that have ordinances that specify they don't want signs to be, they want a certain size, they don't want them too high. And the reason they do that is because they don't want people driving around and from, 10 blocks away, you see the giant Walmart sign. And so they have these, what I call these community waypoint signs that you see on the road. They're at, kind of your 10-foot level or lower. as I think about Edina, that's kind of the impression that I get when I drive around. I don't think about these large signs that are illuminated, that are advertising, hey, this is a Walmart, this is Target, or what have you. I do think about that in a commercial district, but I don't when I'm in a residential district. And so I boil down my thoughts and very simply to say, I just don't think it's necessary. And I can give you 20 more reasons why I don't think it's necessary. But when I look at it, I just don't think it's necessary. And we've talked a few times about the Planning Commission, and are there ways that we can give better direction to them so that they can be more focused? Because I agree with Member Agnew. I, in general, like to align with the commission, but we've had a few things that have come before us this year where it was difficult for us to be in alignment with them. And so I don't in any way want them to feel like we're chastising or not supporting, or I'm acknowledging that there are some challenges in the way that we're asking them to deliberate on things like this, especially when there's so much, there happens to be some subjectivity in the decision. So I would deny. I'm in favor of the appeal.
No, you're.
What am I? How are
you're
we
in
sound?
favor of overturning the Planning Commission decision for approval of the variance. You're in favor
Yes.
of you're
I'm
in favor of granting the appeal.
Of granting the appeal. Yes.
Yeah. All right. I've got a similar sense of things. I thought you all expressed yourselves really well. These elements of subjectivity, reasonable size, circumstances unique to the site, essential character of the neighborhood, no practical difficulty, really are indeed subjective. And for one group of people to look at it one way is, another group of people to look at it another way isn't uncommon. I thought our colleagues did a great job of talking about why this was more about branding and wayfinding. And there are so many ways people do wayfinding now that I don't think this building will be difficult to find. You know, when I go home and I live off the intersection of the Crosstown and 100, and when I go over that 66th Street Bridge and head south on the frontage road, I like seeing the lights out there in Bloomington of the office towers. But for Mr. Tessman and some of his neighbors, they don't want to look north over to the top of OLG and see signage, lighted signage at night. Now, we might be able to adjust that after a certain time frame, but I do think that while we say that variances don't have precedential value, we've already approved a building, kitty corner from this one, where the building on stilts is. And that's going to have some height to it that's equivalent to what's across the street. And I can feel them coming and saying, well, we'd like a lighted sign too. And so are we going to go through that same subjective exercise again and decide whether it is or is not acceptable? In terms of the existing signage, I thought you made a good point there. I don't think those signs are lighted. I know that one on the building on stilts isn't lighted.
Right.
The Come On sign is not lighted. You can find lighted signs on commercial buildings south of 70th on the west side that face east, and they show up from Highway 100, but there's nothing but parkland there to the east, so they're not interfering with any residences. I feel the same way that the majority of my colleagues feel, that I would adopt and be in favor of adopting a resolution overturning the Planning Commission decision and denying the request for a variance for signage. So does someone care to make a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Member, is there a second?
Second.
Member Jackson moves. Member Pierce seconds the adoption of Resolution 2023-80, overturning the Planning Commission decision for approval of the variance for the Maison Green project, just kitty corner here from City Hall. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption of the motion as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. Resolution 2023-80, overturning the Planning Commission decision for approval of the variance is approved. And we move on now to the next matter, which is a potential approval of the design of a design option for the Roslyn Park pedestrian bridge. Many of you know that bridge that crosses across town that has, in recent years, had a propensity to being hit by trucks and taken out of commission. So we got, and it's not ADA compliant, and so we've finally gotten to the point where we got some federal funding coming in, and city funding cobbled together with state funding and federal funding. We can do something about it, and we can make it ADA accessible. So the engineering department and MnDOT have been working on this project to come up with ideas. The neighbors have had some input, but I think there's a question of whether they feel they've had enough input, and so we're going to talk about that this evening and see if we need to give them another chance to weigh in here. So let's go to now back to our Director of Engineering, Chad Milner, for his presentation on some of the design options they've come up with, and then the one they've settled in on as a design possibility, at least what they would be recommending.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Exciting project. We want to build a new pedestrian bridge connecting Roslyn Park with the neighborhood to the north. Like the mayor mentioned, it was hit twice, and one of those hits is on YouTube. So if you search it, you can find the video. It's pretty amazing. With us tonight is Jim Archer from Bolton & Mink. We've hired that firm to help us run through the design options at this point and design this bridge. So his team is working on this, has helped us up to this point. They are also the firm that helps us inspect all of our bridges in town, so they do great work with our bridges. So just a little background on the bridge. It was built in the 1960s. It was hit twice in 2022 and closed for an entire year. That is not ADA compliant, as the mayor mentioned. It was repaired in early 23, but we've made some noted comments about replacing it in the next 5 years was the goal that we had talked about with MnDOT. The replacement is fully funded. So we did get $3 million of a capital bonding request in 23. MnDOT has secured the remaining approximately $3 million. So it's fully funded.
And just for clarity, Director Milner, that capital bonding request, that $3 million came from the state legislature.
Yes, it did. Yep, that is correct.
Not from taxpayers here, in part, because you're part of this state tax-paying system. But.
Yep. So fully funded, which is exciting. We want to keep moving along because we know there's users that want to be able to roll over this bridge. We're shooting for construction in 2025. It is a long approval process with bridges with MnDOT, so we really need the direction as soon as possible so we can get some draft bridge plans in early 24, finish those plans later in 24 and go for bids and have that construction happening in 2025. So again, here's a picture of that bridge during the winter. We don't have snow yet, but there you can see the stairs. You're looking at the north side and the closest to you with the stair facilities. This was when it was closed after it was hit and before it was repaired. So we want to make this more accessible for all users to be able to roll over the highway, which is a major barrier to our bike ped master plan. Another project we learned about when we started scoping out this project, MnDOT came to us in August, September and said, you know that auxiliary lane, that extra third lane that we keep seeing appearing on Highway 62 and then disappearing and then coming back again? We want to make that permanent. And they're now doing a preliminary design to make that permanent, and that is enough work to require them to put in a noise wall, which is something this neighborhood's asked for many, many years. So
great thing.
It looks very favorable that there would be a permanent third lane only for westbound from Valley View Road on the east up to Highway 100 off-ramp on the west. If it's added to their capital plan, which they got to go through their capital planning committee yet, they would look at 2027, 2028 for construction. So knowing this is coming right where we want to do a pedestrian bridge, we've been working with them on how we can make that happen. We think we can build a bridge around and not have to impact this project at all. They've given us some draft ideas of what they're thinking. This is just another schematic of what that would be. It's an extra 12-foot auxiliary lane or a third lane, a 6-foot shoulder that's not there today because they're using the shoulder today for that extra lane. And there you can see the noise wall that would be built on the north side of Highway 62. Those are 20 feet tall. We've seen those go in on other highways within Edina.
Yeah, so for folks in the audience and at home, the comparable wall would be the one that just went up on 169 from Valley View to the crosstown.
Correct. Yep. Exactly. Brand new
on
wall.
the east side.
Yep. So going back to the pedestrian bridge, we reviewed 11 concepts for replacement and developed this matrix, which is in your council packet. There's also graphics of all the different options that we looked at. I'm not going to review all of them, but they included switchbacks, a helix, no switchbacks, stack switchbacks, even an elevator building. So we've met with the neighbors to the north at least 3 times already and got a lot of feedback from them because they're most impacted is that Rose Court area. So been having many meetings with them, many updates. A lot of the criteria and stuff on this is from those meetings with those residents. How do we decide on what is the best option here for our community for this ped bridge? These are the 14 criteria that's in that matrix. So you can see of course, ADA was a big one. We heard from the neighbors about concerns with bike speeds. We looked at operations, impacts to trees and properties, and maintenance and operations and other things on both the north side of the road of Highway 62 and on the south side, which is Roslyn Park. We have operations and park maintenance and activities that happen over there. So we looked at the 14 criteria and rated them, and that's where you have your council packet in that matrix that's in there. So we're recommending option 1A of that matrix, which is switchbacks, and you see it here. So it's probably one of the simplest ones. It's a ramp structure that goes back and forth once. You cross over the highway, and it's back and forth again, touching down within Roslyn Park. The slopes you can see are under 5%. That's the ADA requirement for a ramp. And we'd like to do this and get your approval tonight to keep moving forward. We would engage the community more for aesthetics, but we wanted to know what was feasible first before we went that far. This shows options for this noise wall. So there's 2 locations and 2 opportunities of where this noise wall could be placed in relation to the head bridge. So the blue line is going behind the ramp with an opening that accesses 64th Street and the Wooddale path heading north, or it could be the orange line which cuts through kind of underneath the bridge. And just north of us on Highway 62, or Highway 100 in St. Louis Park, we have both options at the same ped bridge just south of Excelsior Boulevard. So I got a couple photos here. The one on the left, they built the noise wall underneath the ped bridge, and the one on the right, they left an opening in it. There's pluses and minuses with each one. An opening would have a little bit more noise, but you might be hiding some of the users there. The other one would block more of the highway immediately from the highway versus the neighborhood. So we're looking through those 2 options yet on how the noise wall would be integrated within this bridge, and that'll happen during final design.
Do you have any sense of the decibel reduction from those 2 different options? Are they comparable to what you'd have if you had a 20-foot wall?
There's a slight reduction with the opening. So I do have the numbers. I don't remember what that is offhand, but we'll be working with the MnDOT noise office to get those numbers as we continue to work through.
Okay, thank you.
So why do we recommend option 1A with the switchbacks? It meets those ADA requirements. It's least impactful to local street operations, to Highway 62 operations, the residential properties. We can build it with the extra 3rd lane heading westbound in the noise wall and right-of-way impacts. There's less trees removed both on the north and south side of Highway 62 compared to those other options. It's got a mid-range cost. In aesthetics, we would still be determined. You know, we did aesthetics portion of the pedestrian bridge in Grandview later after the approval of the bridge. We would see something similar to maybe have Forecast Public Art come and help us do an aesthetic treatment on this bridge, similar to that process. We'd bring back a public engagement plan to the council for future consideration. But if you have any initial feedback on aesthetics, we would welcome that now or in the near term. So we're really recommending that option and requesting a motion from the council tonight to continue working on this project right now so we can build it in 2025. And I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
So could you go back to the prior slide for a moment? And you say at the bottom, under the aesthetics bullet point, bring back a public engagement plan to council for future consideration. I think all of us got an email, I think it was yesterday, from one of the neighbors who's kind of spearheading the neighborhood concerns and looking for a little slowdown in the process. And so I'm wondering if you've had a chance to talk with all of them about option 1A, because it sure seemed like they had a lot of concerns expressed in that email. And I thought, well, why wouldn't you be engaging them a little bit more now? Because later on, when you've settled in on 1A, then what's the point?
We've engaged them 3 separate times, in-person meetings out at Rose Court in one of the homes. They hosted me to come talk about it, and we've hosted 2 other meetings at Public Works with that same group just this year alone.
And 1A has been part of the conversation?
Yep, 1A has been from the start, because that was a concept MnDOT put together in 2021. So we shared that concept with one other, the Helix from MnDOT, and then our consultant added 8 more options to review. So again, when we look at all the impacts and the balancing of those, 1A keeps coming up as the least impactful and I believe the best option.
So I don't have that email in front of me, but what were some of the concerns that they raised that you addressed or would address?
Yeah, screening of the neighboring properties. So the noise wall really does the screening. We were going to look at how do we put some kind of screening on the bridge so users couldn't look down into these properties. But with the noise wall in this option A, it might screen the whole thing, or we'll still look at screening. The other concern was bike speeds. Well, that for me as a user is people got to be considerate of each other. If you're on a bike and there's walkers with strollers, you got to be considerate as a bike user. None of the designs would really speak to that. So how do we make it where bikes have to slow down? You do these turns, and that's how you do it, versus a super long ramp as one of the other options. So those are the 2 biggest concerns. And trees. I think the trees here along this little corridor on 64th between the 2 projects are gone. That's just, there's not enough space there to put a bridge and a noise wall. So instead of trees, there'll be a noise wall there. And we'll look for opportunities. Where can we replace those trees within this area that we take down?
Though the bridge would be built to accommodate those non-motorized movements by either pedestrians or bicyclists, couldn't you require that bicyclists walk their bikes across? Because I can see that as a potential conflict point. I think others could too, that you've got somebody with a stroller on the bridge and somebody buzzes by him on a bike. What's the proposed width of the bridge?
10 feet. So it's as wide as the 9 Mile Creek Regional Trail, which has mixed users. There's plenty of space. We haven't had issues there, so we're trying to provide enough space so everybody can be accommodated.
Okay.
You're going to have, those impacts, but people got to look out for each other.
I'm sure other council members have questions too. Let me turn to folks here. Member Risser, then Member Jackson.
When I look at Better Together, I see all these bridge projects. I see the potential conservation project for the Wooddale Stone Bridge. I see the very early conceptual project for creating a bridge over France Avenue. When I hear that this will go up on Better Together so that neighbors can provide aesthetic ideas, it makes me really think about the bridge over the railway tracks, which apparently was designed to help people get from the parking ramp safely across, moving in an easterly direction, and that's a problem. And I really do not understand, why we don't have this up on Better Together now. And it strikes me that if anyone wants to see all of the different options that were presented, they need to go and they need to watch a city meeting, go to this meeting, click on the agenda, click on the link, and then they'll get to those images. And, I feel like it's great. There were meetings for the Rose Court neighborhood, but other people might have ideas about which plan looks best. And so why was this not put up on Better Together a while ago?
We didn't know it was feasible. These renderings and the matrix just got done October 25th. So we had draft ones, but we didn't know what was feasible at this point.
Well, we certainly don't know what's feasible for the bridge over France Avenue, and that's up on Better Together.
Sure. Other Member Jackson.
Yeah, I had a similar question. How did we determine who noticed to these meetings? How did we reach out to the neighborhood?
It was the neighborhood champions of this neighborhood, and they put together invites, because when we had our latest meeting, we had people from Virginia, the Concord neighborhood showed up at Public Works. We had many people.
Okay, so people from the word got out.
Neighborhood, yeah.
Okay. What would be the effect of delaying this to the next meeting and putting it up on Better Together for the next 2 weeks?
It'd be a 2-week delay. Again, I'd love to have it tonight so we can start. MnDOT's got a tight schedule, but 2 weeks isn't going to impact the overall schedule, in my opinion, that much. If you're going to delay it, I would wait till the second meeting in December, because I won't be here on the 5th.
Okay.
So if I need to answer questions, I prefer, since I've been the one involved in it.
Okay.
So from a timing standpoint, that's okay. We don't have any threat of loss of grant monies or bonding monies.
We do
We
not.
wait till the end of December, the second meeting in December.
But I wouldn't want to
I
go
would-
much further than that in the future.
I guess I would ask, what do you want from the website? We just post it? I mean, we don't have a public engagement plan in front of you yet. We were going to bring that back and say, here's where the neighbors have influence, and we thought aesthetics is what's going to be, because a lot of the things that we've talked about are operational with MnDOT, with city operations, that they won't have impact on. So if we can just post it to the website tomorrow, but is there, not having a defined public engagement plan, I'd be concerned on what we're trying to get out of that process.
Well, I'd like to see this matrix and then the pictures, just basically the packet, the information you put in our packet. So that the concern that I saw was someone was saying, these are a lot of steps for someone who's handicapped, why not put an elevator in? And I know that there are concerns with that, but I think we'd like to sort of see, be able to hear from people on that. I get the feeling that we got several emails on this in the last couple of days from people saying, I didn't get a chance to talk about this. And so I'd like to sort of hear if there are issues that we need to address. And so that's why I'd like to see it. Just like I said, this matrix and the pictures of what they are, the different options are, I think would be useful.
Yeah, but I want to clarify, it's not an inform. You just don't want to post it and inform people. You want to gather feedback from the community. So you want one of the widgets, you want to collect comments or something. I want to make sure that it's not just an informed level of participation.
Correct. I'd like to gather comments, please.
Okay.
Councilmember Agnew.
Thank you. There were a couple of questions about the elevator, and in the matrix, it says that there's the high cost associated with that. I think some of the concerns were what Member Jackson was saying of the long distance, and it potentially the use of the switchbacks, prioritizing bikers instead of other folks that are pushing a stroller or in a wheelchair or other users. And so can we as a city council have information on the different costs associated with this plan that we have and the elevator from a long-term perspective? Because I understand that the upfront cost might be more, but I also want to know is long-term maintenance, thinking about things like snow removal, how do those things balance out over time?
We could bring that information back. We've done an initial analysis, and the elevator issue is actually the long-term maintenance, trying to keep the thing running. We've called other cities that have tried that, and it's a maintenance nightmare with Minnesota winters to keep an elevator operating. And then how do you remove the snow on a facility with access from elevators to get a 10,000-pound piece of equipment up there to remove snow from the bridge? So we can bring those numbers back.
Thank you.
Member Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I don't envy the position you're in. I just want to acknowledge, I personally think that this is primarily about the optics of how we're getting input from the community. And sometimes we get it right, sometimes we don't. And in this particular case, the question I would have for you is, as you look at all of the options, I agree that we should post it on Better Together. We should re-engage with the community to get that additional feedback. But I'm just trying to be fair to the process. And so given all the options that you've looked at, once we go through this next 2-week period, what options that you've looked at that you really think are viable options for the pedestrian bridge? And you just, as an example, you just talked about the elevator, how difficult it would be for that. So if you could just give a commentary on what you think, based on your analysis, what other options do you think are really viable?
It's all trade-offs. It's trade-offs. If you want an elevator, then somebody that commutes by bike has to stop, wait for an elevator to go. It's not a typical practice for ADA. If you want a super long ramp, that's feasible, but now you're taking down 10 oak trees in Roslyn Park. It's all trade-offs. Yep. We tried to score the trade-offs, score those criteria from a benefit to an impact. And when we did that on the matrix, this one is the least impactful when we consider all 14 criteria. So, I'm an engineer. We can build any one of these, I think, but we got to try to score it somehow, and that's what the matrix is doing. And I still think this is going to be the one that's least impactful when we consider all 14 criteria.
And so I asked that question because, to me, that would be part of the focus would be really diving into and helping people understand how you're making those trade-offs to lead to this decision versus just having a meeting to gather more input. So I think it needs to be really specific in helping people understand the trade-offs and why this solution we think is the best solution. If we don't do that, in 2 weeks, we'll actually be in the same place. We'll make a decision, yay or nay, and then residents will be appreciative or they won't be. But it actually doesn't make us better as a community if we don't spend the time and really make sure people understand those trade-offs that led to this particular option, if you believe it is the best option, which is the way I interpret the information that's before us. So I think it's wise to take the pause, but to be really specific about what we're going to do and purposeful in that 2-week pause. Oh, I had one other question. 4 weeks, thank you, Scott. The switchbacks, can you bring the view back up and just explain what that means to me? I'm trying to follow that. So option 1A with switchbacks, what does that specifically mean?
Just so, see my cursor, So this is the Wooddale path coming from Wooddale Valley View. So if you're heading south, you'll cross 64th Street. You'll be on a path facility, and then it's going to turn into a bridge structure, and it's going to ramp up. You're going to go underneath the bridge here, and then you're going to go up at less than 5% slope for a couple hundred feet. This is standard practice bridges all over the metro. And then you're going to turn. This is a switchback. When you make a 180, a switchback.
Okay.
And then you come, and then you're going to cross the bridge. This is a switchback versus a helix, which is what's right outside here, just south on 100, with a big circle that you just keep going. And those are the ones that bikes can get some speed up and just go all the way down. You see the kids doing it. This one is a little more deliberate with the 180 that slows those bikes down.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
That's it.
Member Jackson, something?
Yes, thank you. So one of the questions was, is this going to, and I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyways, this will be tall enough where we won't have the trucks bumping it anymore. Okay,
Correct.
Thank
you. With some contingency height.
Yeah.
For those I-beams.
Whatever we do, it's a massive improvement over what we've got going on over there. But to the point my colleagues are making too, it doesn't feel like we're at a decision point. It just feels like, maybe you need to take us over to Public Works for a night and say, okay, along with neighbors or just a public invitation to have us all over there and walk through all these different options and we get more comfortable with it. Even with that little bridge we put across the railroad track by Jerry's, we had a lot of input on that. And then from an aesthetic standpoint, I think it's really important for people to have options. Well, what do you mean by aesthetics? You got these basic structural forms that you can use that allow us to stay within budget and keep people safe as they're going using the bridge, and whether they have disabilities or they're fully capable of moving on their own. We just, I personally, I think I'd benefit from coming over and having a meeting some night. You called a couple weeks from now at Public Works, and the whole town gets invited, and the neighborhood can come over, and we can hear on a first-hand basis what all their concerns were.
Okay. We, I didn't want to share all the options here.
We try to make a decision at the end of December.
Yeah.
But I think you should also have some ideas on what what could we do aesthetically, you know?
Yeah, we were going to run a similar process where we let the artists kind of think
What
about
are
it.
some
We
of
get
the
some
ideas?
guidance
Yeah.
from you, and they get options that went out for the public to vote on, and it could be metal panels, it could be lighting, it could be a name on the side of it, you know, City of Edina, it could be Roslyn Park, it could be, I don't want to be the one
Well, it's a
picking the
chance
art.
for bridge sculpture is what it is. I mean, if you want to.
Exactly,
You know?
yep.
And whether it's lighting or the ironwork or however it's done, this is a chance to really brand. It's kind of a branding piece for Edina.
Yep.
And so I think, you know, it'd be helpful to have some artistic input on that.
And that's what
trying
we
to think,
would bring.
who is a famous Spanish bridge builder? Calatrava? You know, every one of his bridges looked like a piece of architecture. And or a sculpture, piece of sculpture. You know, this is our chance to do something special here, beyond the basic functionality of it.
Yep.
So let's
Okay.
do that. Let's hold off till the end of December, and in the gap period here, once you get back, set a meeting up for a couple weeks from now, so we get plenty of time to visit with people, and then we'll all try to get out there too, and so we can hear all of the options.
Okay.
Yeah. And we trust you, but you know, we want we want to think about it too.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Okay. We got a couple more items in this portion of the agenda, and the next one, Director Milner is standing up here because he's got this matter as well. And this, it's on the agenda, it's labeled out as next steps for organized trash collection for single-family dwellings. I think it'd be better if it was appropriately designated as, you know, a discussion around, do we maintain the status quo on an open, what we call an open collection system, free enterprise system, or do we begin the legal process to organize trash collection, and that has a specific pathway from a state statute standpoint that we have to follow that allows for a lot of public input along the way. I don't personally think it's enough, but we'll talk about that as you go along, and we'll get a sense of the council. And this is another situation where we've got a board or commission like the Planning Commission that's advisory to the council. Here we've got the Energy and Environment Commission and the Edina Transportation Commission suggesting, yeah, this is something worth taking a look at, you know, and so we can decide tonight whether we feel the same way, whether we think it's worth taking a look at and go through the process, including public engagement, or we can say, yeah, we like it the way it is. It's not broken. Let's not try to fix it. And so we'll look forward to your portion of the presentation, and then we'll have a conversation amongst council members. And this is in total recognition, using the audience. I think all of us have probably gotten 30 to 40 phone calls a day, hundreds of emails. We understand your thoughts. We had a quality life survey several years ago, and it looked like that changed over time in terms of people's attitude towards organized collection. But some of those opinions came from people in apartments, or the owner of the apartment building is going to pick the garbage hauler. You know, so it's different from a single-family situation. And so there's a lot to talk about, I think, tonight. But we're going to let you lead us into the topic, and then we'll bring it back to the council for a more robust discussion.
Thank you, Mayor, for that introduction. Yeah, organized trash collection. So really reviewing the staff report that's in your packet. This is for residential collection. We wanted to be clear on that. And I'm presenting on behalf of a staff team, right? We had advisory communications from EEC, ETC. We have public health here, transportation. So we got a whole host of staff members here to help me answer questions when we get to that point. But we're really, staff and commissions are seeking a direction or decision or discussion here tonight, just like the mayor mentioned. Stay status quo, stay as an open collection system, or begin that legal process to organize trash collection. And we're talking about organized trash collection from a residential service, and it's really a defined system of collecting waste, and it's defined by the state statute. And it's generally buildings up to 8 units. Is what we're looking at here tonight as part of that residential discussion. So if council directs staff to begin the process, it's very defined. So the 2013 Waste Management Act, it's very structured. It's a defined process by statute with very limited flexibility in there. And residents, they've been calling for participate in a public hearing on the matter. If you do that public hearings are required as part of that process. We can, I'm sure, host more public hearings, but it is part of the process, and we would also use our Better Together page and do the typical engagement like we do with other projects that we've discussed here earlier tonight. So a little background, where did this come from in the recent history? 2021, it was a Transportation Commission Work Plan Initiative, and the item said investigate the impacts of organized trash collection while considering travel demand management objectives, environmental goals, and reducing wear and tear on city streets. So they reviewed the city's goals and objectives. They analyzed the quality of life survey results. They met with Bloomington and Richfield staff who had recently done organized trash collection, and they reviewed literature. And their recommendation, they believe that there's sufficient evidence to support moving forward with organized trash. Recommends that the City Council direct staff to create a plan to establish it, and part of that plan would be determining staffing and administrative costs, a timeline, and a communication plan. The ETC at that time also voted to support the ETC report and provided comments. And then in your packet tonight is 2 more advisory communications, one from each of those commissions, the ETC and EEC, and they're later on your agenda, but they submitted additional advisory communications on this topic, and they continue to support that this should move forward. Organized trash is not specifically mentioned in the comp plan or living streets, but it's briefly mentioned in the climate action plan. And I'm going to step through these 6 bullet points just to give the analysis that staff did regarding climate action and sustainability, equity, some quality of life measures, including traffic safety, noise, and customer service, economic development, impacts to roads, and then staffing. So when we look at sustainability and climate action, we know there is some reduction in fuel if we would go to organized trash. We just can't determine what the actual impacts would be. So we're labeling that as incremental. A better measure is that engine hours, whether that truck is driving to a different street or picking up garbage, it's running all day long already. So there is some incremental change in emissions and fuel use. We can't quantify it, but again, that engine is running all day, either within the city or in a portion of the city if you go to organized. From an equity standpoint, we have some mixed results when it comes to cost. We know that some will see a reduction in cost and some will see an increase. The customers that tend to call more often, kind of like cable TV, see these better rates and they continue to see the better pricing. So if people have time and they're willing to do that, they would see better pricing, or they move from hauler to hauler to get those intro pricing rates. We do know that if you organize, there'll be more transparency in the pricing because there are city contracts at that point. Quality of life, I provided 3 topics here. Traffic safety was a topic that came up with the ETC. We've reviewed crash data. We've reviewed safety requests, traffic safety requests. We have no evidence of accidents or a measurable safety issue with the garbage trucks. I'm sure there's an occasional fender bender, but no sustained evidence. Potentially the roads are safer with less trucks on a street, but we're not seeing like major impacts from a traffic safety standpoint with the trucks. Noise, having 6 trucks go up and down your street versus 1, there will be a reduction in noise. That's just a fact. So there is reduction in noise. And then customer service, we heard from people in the community and also with Bloomington and Richfield that it's mixed. You know, depending how the haulers are acting today, they might have exceptional customer service and some might not. So it's a mix. Some will see better customer service, some worse if you organize. The mayor, you mentioned the quality of life survey. So we've had resident feedback, and since 2011, the survey has included questions about garbage collection. And since 2015 to 2023, average of 87% gave good or excellent ratings of their quality of collection. So you can see those broke up those numbers over those 6 years or 5 years of surveys. In 2023, the ETC recommended a change in that question related to garbage, and the council approved that change. So if you look at the percentages here, this is the numbers that support a change to organized trash hauling if you remove the don't know responses. So that question stayed the same in 2015 through 2021, and you can see it ranged anywhere from 49% to 53% supported changing to organized trash if we remove the don't know responses. And the green line is where the question changed. It was reworded, and you saw in 2023 that survey showed a 59% support for changing to organized trash collection if you remove the don't know responses. Economic development was brought up. This does not support the city's stated goal as it generally prevents or limits business growth because you're limiting potentially how many haulers, or you're defining where they can operate and how they operate. Small-sized and local haulers are very concerned about being pushed out. So if you do the legal process, the market share today would be sustained. That same haulers could participate in the negotiations. They would have a 7-year contract. After 7 years, then the city can decide to do what they want, and they can limit how many haulers are within the city. So they're very concerned about the economics in their business models. The impacts to roads, minimal. We design our roads to handle the garbage trucks and the loading. That isn't a factor, in my opinion, on making a decision one way or not to do this, to organize or not. And then staffing. We heard from the commissions, they were concerned how we drafted our report when it comes to staffing. So I just wanted to be upfront about that. Bloomington and Richfield, they have dedicated staff to do this. And they said, you need dedicated staff to do this. They would recommend having a staff member in place if you move forward before that legal process even goes forward, because then you have a consistent person that's managing the contracts and all those sort of things. And the haulers also recommended the same thing, where they've seen other communities do this and not have that consistent staff member available for them. The legal opinion from our legal team, we can add a fee on the contracts to cover that staff person. So we do have a way once they start to cover it. And if the opinion of the council is to start that process, we would highly recommend you look at adding that staff member immediately to help move this initiative forward, because it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of effort. And we met with the haulers. We had them come in and said, share what you can. We know there's some stuff you can't share with us, but what can you share with us? And the haulers, we did a hybrid meeting where they could come in person and participate online. And those meeting minutes are in the packet too. So general comments is that from them is that the organized supports the large companies, the large haulers versus more the small local haulers. The city could legally consolidate those number of haulers after that first contract, and I mentioned that earlier. Smaller, more local haulers feels that they would lose that ability to provide that unique service that they do today. And it may be more difficult to detail in the contracts and enforce customer service standards. With an open market, customers go. If they're not getting the service, they're going to go to somebody else and get the service and find the hauler that meets their needs. That's the way the open market works. So a little bit of the procedural requirements, just so you know that before we start the discussion. So if you want to move forward, the city would give notice to the public and the licensed haulers, and you'd enter into a negotiation period to create a proposal. So if during that negotiation period an agreement is reached, you would conduct a public hearing that would be held before that final decision, and that initial agreement would be in effect for 7 years. If no agreement is reached, then the city may form an options committee, which would do the same thing. They would meet and try to come up with an agreement. They would issue a report, and the city still must hold a public hearing before that final decision. And then organized collection, if it keeps going through all these steps, can begin no sooner than 6 months after that final decision. So again, we're here tonight to have a discussion and learn what direction the council wants to move. We did not provide a direction, but we gave you 2 options here to consider and start that discussion. So 1 is status quo, we don't do anything. 2 is begin the legal process to organize trash collection. And I'd be happy to stand for any questions at this time, and the rest of the staff team would also be available to answer questions.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Director Milner. I just want to go back briefly to this topic we touched briefly on before, and that is all the folks in the audience, all the folks listening in, how much we appreciated your input. Really important. I think we got a person in our community named Peter Brocious who just retired as director at the Children's Theater, and if you talk to him about theater and democracy, he'll tell you they both started in ancient Greece about the same time, and for democracy, every voice should be capable of being heard, and every voice matters. And I can tell you that over the years I've been involved in this, every voice does matter. You don't always end up agreeing with everybody, but the voices that you've heard help you make a more well-informed decision, and hopefully a better decision. So I think all of us regret that we don't have the capacity to answer 500 emails, and to I know some folks wanted to understand it better, and I just didn't have an opportunity to call them back. But I've got a long log here of things I've kept track of from a comment standpoint, and all of it very valuable to this whole conversation, I think, and all of us probably feel the same way. And I think I speak on behalf of all of my colleagues with regard to thanking you for the input. For the haulers, as I mentioned at the very beginning of the meeting, when you look at that brochure that they sent out to people, I thought it was very straightforward, and it was accurate, and it expressed that we were going to have a discussion on this. And for some folks, they may have gotten the information a different way done through the brochure, because on a second or third hand basis, there were a lot of calls from people that assumed we were going down that pathway of organized hauling, and government was going to be telling them what to do. And that just wasn't accurate. But it made me think about how we operate in this virtual world now, where, what's that comment or that saying that, a rumor can be halfway around the world before the truth gets its pants on in the morning. And there's a little bit of that feeling here. So we hope that this hearing tonight, or this conversation, will help us head in a direction that the majority of this council wants to go in. I've got my thoughts. I'm sure everybody else has theirs, and we're gonna find out a little bit about that as we converse on this issue this evening. And I think a lot of it is going to involve a reflection of what all of you have told us and shared with us. So I don't know if anybody in particular wants to start the conversation, or I can, whatever.
I can start. I'll go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, James.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So just a couple of things. I want to echo some of the comments you made, Mr. Mayor. But again, kind of my theme tonight, to be fair, we got lots of comments, and some of the comments said things like, I can't believe you guys are going to make a decision without input. Well, that's not true. We got comments saying, well, you're going to make a decision without data. Well, that's not true. And so I appreciate the presentation and going through and seeing just how much input is infused in the process to actually make a change. And then in addition to that, all the input that we're getting, and then understanding that today is just about really that conversation to figure out what we think the right path would be to get to the next step. And so my ask, and I replied to a few people, just be fair in that. And if you're hearing someone say, well, they're not using data, they're not using input, well, I can tell you nothing could be further from the truth. And so we're not, right, again, being fair and balanced, we're not great all the time at being upfront in terms of here's what we mean by what we're going to talk about today. And so we've had a couple of those challenges today. But there isn't anybody up here that is up here with some kind of conspiracy, who's not honestly trying to take the input and the data that we have in front of us, listen to the people that reach out to us, and then try to represent the community as a whole. And so we don't necessarily always hold up the transparency that is needed for that. But I can tell you I'm trying to do that. I think my colleagues are trying to do that as well. So continue to reach out, not just on this, on anything, because we really are trying to do the right thing whenever something is before us. And so my feedback on this, you talked about, Mr. Milner, the economic impact. Well, so that's one of the things that I do struggle with, is whenever we're making a decision that impacts the market, and I'll use the term in a negative way, Now, sometimes we have to artificially control the market for whatever reason. There are some reasons we do that. You can think of the Feds adjusting interest rates, right? They're artificially trying to control the market to drive the economy in a certain place. And so we do that from time to time as part of our process. But for me, if we're going to make a decision that does two things, one, artificially impacts the market, and two, if it takes away choice in the market, I think I would need a supermajority of the electorate to say, yep, we want to do that. And so when I look at the data, we don't have that. So we're at 59% today, and it's edging up. But it would be hard for me to suggest to do something other than status quo that is going to impact the market, right, and is going to take away a choice that we have today. I would need a supermajority of people saying, yep, that's the right thing to do. So then the question is, well, all right, James, if that's how you feel, and I'm only one of the council, then how do you get to that? And it is, in my opinion, the reason we go to mandates is because it's the easiest thing to do. Like it's hard, right? You get the arrows, but it's the easy work to say, you know what? We've heard everybody. We think this is the right thing to do. We're going to mandate it. We're going to go do it. That's an easier lift, I'll put it that way. But to get to a point where a supermajority of the electorate agree that this is the right choice for the community or a good choice for the community, we got to do the work of saying, okay, here's why we think we should do it, and do the awareness piece to help people understand why we think this is the better thing for our community. And as we start to do that, more and more effective communications, we'll start to see that percentage go up. And once it does, then I think more people will make the choice that this is the right thing to do. But I personally just don't think we're at that point yet with organized trash. Let me check my notes. I had one other thing I wanted to mention. Okay. And so just a couple more things. When we start talking about data, there's lots of data in here, and we've been collecting data since 2015 on this. This isn't something that we just started doing a couple weeks ago. But when you look at how we interpret that data, when the commissions look at the same data and suggest that, and this is in your presentation tonight, the roads, right? I can subjectively say, if we're going to have fewer trucks on the road, that's better for the roads. I mean, that seems logical, right? But if we look at that same data point and suggest that we need to do this because it's better for the roads or it's not better for the roads, at some point we have to be able to have clear and concise data that parties can look at and reasonably come to the same conclusion. With this data, we haven't done that. I shouldn't say it that way. We're not at that point where we are looking at it and interpreting it in the same way to make one decision or the other. And so that leads me to say, I think we should stick with the status quo. And then the last thing I would add, if we go through that process of being clear on the data that we're using to make the decision, there's more than one way to do this. And one of the other ideas that could also work is to actually leverage the free market. And so I'll use an example, and I am totally just using this as an example. There's nothing that stops, I live in Highlands on Merritt Circle. There's nothing that stops Merritt Circle for me from having a meeting with my neighbors to say, you know what, we don't want 12 trucks on this street. How about we get together and we choose one hauler, and we can all decide which one works best for us. We could negotiate a rate, and on Merritt Circle, we could have one hauler, right? You could do that for all of Morningside. But what that means is neighborhoods have to be organized, and they have to do the hard work. And then from a city perspective, us saying these are the factors that are improved by having fewer haulers, and sharing that with the community associations, and then helping them organize to then go after the same benefit. And so there's more than one way to do this. But in all of that, I feel like it leads me to say we should continue with the status quo, but that doesn't mean do nothing. That means we still have work to do to help the community understand why we think there are certain factors that we can impact, and these are the ways that we think we can do that. And I would be supportive of something of that nature, as opposed to going directly to starting with organized hauling. So,
Thank you. Thank you, Member Pierce. Member Agnew.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I think a big part of this for me is we haven't heard from everybody yet. We have our quality of life survey, but that goes out to 2,000, I might be incorrect on that, but approximately 2,000 residents. And not all of those are responses that we get back. And so when we think about that, then we also can look at the emails that we've received, the emails and the calls. And I think since, it was known that this would be a topic due to mailers going out, I received well over 1,000 emails. So if you add those two, we're at 1,500 people within the community, plus or minus, that we've actually heard from. But that isn't the entire community. And so for me, I want to continue getting input and continue having these conversations. And I think that the other part of it is I still feel like we don't have enough data. And this, I think, was evident in the presentation that we had tonight, even talking about something like emissions, right? And I think that this is what Member Pierce was getting at directly, of how can we have kind of two different lenses on data and come to different conclusions. Well, that tells me that we don't have enough data. I can't logically make the connection of if you have one truck that goes down 20 blocks, that you're going to expend the same amount of emissions as if they're going across 100 blocks due to potentially the time taking being the same. And so I'm having a hard time tracing even the conversations or the data points that were within the presentation made by the city, which tells me that we need more data. But I also know that there are elements of this data that we can't get without starting this process and going down the path of collecting more data. I've heard from residents who don't let their kids play in the street on garbage day. And that's because they say, there's 6 haulers coming down our street. We, have it where it's all day. It's an all day thing. And that's concerning to me, right? I think that there are real reasons that we have brought this up as a topic of a discussion, that we've been collecting data since 2015. We saw all those reasons presented in the staff report as well. When we think about noise, we think about emissions, we think about safety, we think about wear and tear on the streets. And even though we might not have the sufficient data to prove or deny any of those claims, I still think that it's worth pursuing collecting more data. I also think that there is a very specific lens that we've received on the recent communications that have come in. When a mailer goes out with the intention of pushing people to reach out to their council members to object to a certain outcome, we are going to get people who object to that outcome reaching out to us. I've spoken to some people that they said, oh yeah, I got that mailer, I just assumed y'all were doing it and I support it, so I didn't reach out. So I do think that I would love to explore as a city, like, how can we get more data, right? How can we add the under 500 of the quality of life respondents and the 1,000 emails and get even more of a perspective of those within our community? I ultimately don't know how I feel about it today, right? If you asked me to make a decision today, I couldn't, because I need more data, I need more input. But I do know that there's opportunities within the system as it is today. I do know that, we have these concerns about traffic, about safety. And then I think even more broadly, and maybe a little bit of scope creep here, right? But we hear things about people lumping in, well, what could we do about recycling? And recycling's only every other week. And what about yard waste pickup? That ends after, this week was the last week for yard waste pickup for a lot of haulers. Well, my tree doesn't drop the leaves until way late in the season because they're oaks. And so I think that there's a lot of opportunity within our waste management solution for the city that we have today that means that there could be value that we're adding across the board. We hear people concerned about prices increasing and service decreasing. Absolutely, those are not the goals of what we would want to achieve. We want to improve the service. We want to improve what it adds to our city. And I think that there's a way that we can do that. And again, we're not making a decision on this today. What I'm seeing this is as a decision to, do we want to collect more information and try to make, an informed, data-driven decision for our community.
Thank you, Member Agnew. Member Jackson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the first question that I was hit with in all of these emails is, why are we even having this discussion? And I want to make it perfectly clear that we had residents who are volunteers for the city come forward to us and ask us to consider this, and people who put a lot of time and effort into this. And so just like anybody else who petitions the city, who wants us to investigate something, we're going to take that very seriously. And that's really important to me, that neighbors come forward and say, I want you to take this seriously. I want you to look at it. This is a quality of life issue for us and for many people. So I want to acknowledge the hard work that went into getting us to this point, and that this isn't random. This isn't us sitting at the dais coming up with this. This is a citizen-driven initiative. The reasons given in favor of this were very clear. Reducing miles traveled. I've got the work plan here from the Transportation Commission. I want to just read it if I can find it. Here we go. So it's minimize the impacts of the transportation system on the environment and quality of life, provide for efficient movement of goods within Edina, and manage, maintain, and operate roadways to maximize wherever possible the safety and mobility of all users and modes. These are things that the Transportation Commission has pledged to do for all residents, and this is one of the ways that they see that would happen, and I take that very seriously. We also got a number of communications from the Energy and Environment Commission, and I'm going to hold off on that for just a second, because the one thing that has not been talked about this at all by anybody in this discussion, except for the communication we got tonight from the Energy and Environment Commission, is that there is a state mandate that 75% of all of our solid waste will be recycled, whether as organics or as traditional recycling, by 2030. We're currently at 30% or 40% of recycling, so we've got a long ways to go. This isn't something that we as a city council came up with. The state of Minnesota has told us that we have to reduce our solid waste stream. And that's not going away regardless of what we decide tonight. And I just want people who are focused on garbage, I want you to start thinking about that. So when we have composting in our city, we are trying to reach that goal. And the reason we're reaching that goal is our landfills are filling up. In a report from the state in June of this year, they said that at our current rate of trash creation, we're going to fill our existing landfills in 5 to 14 years. Okay? Hennepin County is looking at closing the incinerator in downtown Minneapolis. When they had this discussion, they said, oh, the cities will help us reduce solid waste. So that'll help us when we close the HERC. And so the pressure is on us to meet these goals from higher levels of government. So if we're looking at various different ways of handling solid waste, it's not because we're being random, but because this is a state mandate. And I take that very seriously, especially since our landfills are filling up. And if we can build new landfills or extend the ones, it's still going to cost money. So your garbage bills are going to be going up regardless, because we have a lot of garbage that we have to process. And I just wanted to raise the awareness of that. This has been a learning process for a lot of things, and I'm really glad that we're having this conversation. It goes to a lot of different values. Certainly, it's no surprise that I'm an environmentalist, but I'm also a supporter of small businesses. And one of the things, so before I go that, I want to talk to what the EEC, the Energy and Environment Commission, told us, because I think this is also important, that the state has identified, as well as the Energy and Environment Commission, that organized hauling will help us understand, gather data about the type of garbage that we're putting on, how much organics is going into the landfill that could be going to organics recycling, and gather that data that's necessary for us to begin to reduce our solid waste. And that's a very important factor. And we don't have that data, and we're not going to get it without organized hauling. They also talk about the greenhouse gas emissions and just educating people on diversion. But as I said, this has been a learning process for me. And I have a lot of different values. I value the environment, but I also value small business. And what I learned in this process is that organized hauling puts up silos, and it puts up barriers to entry. And that really disturbs me. One of the things that the free market is doing for our community is increasing the value of service. And the number of elderly people I've heard from, I get help from my garbage man. My old company didn't do that. It's very difficult for me to move my bins around, and the hauler that I'm with now is helping me. And that's a big quality of life issue. And if we go to organized hauling, what the free market is doing now will fall on our staff to have to respond to these concerns, and that's going to be a really difficult job. My father-in-law, I'm going to paraphrase him, he said, big government favors big business. And I'm very concerned about the impact on small businesses in our community in doing this. So this is a really difficult issue, and I think the number of responses we've gotten from people has been very evocative of that. But I have to say, I like what the free market is able to do for service in our community. I'm not convinced that organized hauling will actually reduce the waste stream management, but I know that it will probably reduce the service for some of our residents and some of our residents who really need it. So this is an extremely difficult decision for me, but I just don't think, I was asked, whatever your decision is, make a decision tonight. And I'm very sad to say that I probably do not want to go forward with organized trash collection, but it's not an easy decision, and that reality of our garbage stream overwhelming our landfills is not going to go away regardless of what we decide tonight. So that's
Thank you, Member Jackson. Member Risser.
I want to thank everyone who wrote letters, and I want to tell you that I'm not finished going through them all, and I will go back over them because they are so compelling, and they've made me think that there are other things that the city should do. More than one person wrote that they share a small garbage can with their neighbor. I have the smallest garbage can, and we barely fill it up. We maybe put a third, fill it a third, and that's it. It's the little 36-gallon version. And with recycling, with composting, the amount of trash I am producing is small. But I will, total honesty, there are weeks where I'm looking at that trash can and I'm like, what can I put in it? Okay? And that's not good. All right? I think there is, I think we need to look at capacity. I think we need to make it legal so that people can share small trash cans or large trash cans. Let's figure out how we can take steps as a municipality to be really innovative and to get at what Member Jackson pointed out, which is so important, and that is to reduce the amount of waste going into our landfills. There are other things that cities are doing. Golden Valley does a textile service so that if you have old sheets, old pillowcases, clothing that you cannot donate because it's in really ragged condition, you can bring it in a special bag and they will take it and then it will be used for something else. So I think what all of this has taught me is that you all have a lot to say. The other thing is I share the experience of so many, starting with a hauler that really did not provide good service, going to a small local hauler, and I'm not going to say who it is, and then having a very positive experience, and just seeing how many people are on a first name basis with their garbage hauler. That's kind of a big deal. So I think all of that does matter, but here's the thing. We have too many trucks on the road. This morning I was walking my dog with my daughter, and we come around the corner, there's this garbage truck and it starts backing up, and so the big beep goes off, and we literally see this light come on in the house down the road, this little head pop up, and then the light goes off, and so the person saw that here was this truck. Okay, and so I think we all respond to things in terms of our own experience. There are streets in Edina that on trash day are just really very challenging for the residents. And some of them it's because there's parking allowed and it's a narrow place and it's hard to get around, but the noise, the disruption, all of that. So I think we need to get our heads together. I did hear from a resident who said in a neighborhood that he knew, everybody came together and decided on a hauler, and then they got a discounted rate because everyone is using the same hauler. Okay, so what I want to really take the ideas that you wrote, and again, I'm not done going through those, and I think we need to have another session sometime next year where we are coming up with things that we can do to our code, to our policy, our messaging, to make it possible for there to be fewer places where there's pickups. I'm out raking leaves and I'm thinking, what if on a cul-de-sac, there was one trash can that had divisions for the number of houses in it, and it was just this one thing that got picked up. I think there's a lot of room for innovation. Organized hauling is on some level, you hear, and really this is hard for me because I think it seems intuitively like this is a great way to go because then you only have one truck. Okay, and obviously there's going to be less fuel. There's going to be less damage to the road, but here's my problem with it. If it means that we have haulers that maybe don't care that much about appropriately sizing the containers to the use, we're going to, I think, end up generating more garbage than we really need to generate. And that is a major concern for me. So we need to move forward. The status quo cannot, I agree with Member Pierce. The status quo does not mean we just stick with the status quo. And I'm going to start by continuing to read all of your emails, listen to your phone calls, compile that data in some way. And I think what we need to do is launch an effort of how is it that Edina reduces the number of trucks in areas, how is it that we reduce the number of garbage, the amount of garbage that we're producing. Also, I heard someone was telling me, and I don't know if this still happens, but in Bloomington, allegedly, they have this day where everybody puts out on their front lawn all the stuff they don't want, and people drive around. Can't we have that in Edina? I think there's so much that we could do. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Russer. I think this is the third time that we've looked at this issue. And so I was thinking as we agreed to have this discussion, what reasons could exist that would cause one to think about changing what we have? And so, in theory, if you thought about the things that Director Milner talked about, is greenhouse gas reduction, in our community, our residents are saying, yeah, do some things about greenhouse gas reduction. Decarbonization is an important thing to be thinking about. Could those heavy trucks be damaging our streets? Well, a lot of people put in new streets, and then they want to go to this organized hauling, and we say, go see your neighbors. And they go poll the neighbors, and it's like 50-50, even though they've just spent $10,000 on a new street. The 1 day a week situation where you've got maybe up to 6 garbage trucks on your street, it is a little bit burdensome, and it may be a little bit noisy, but it's 1 day a week. And then, just some of the other issues that Director Milner touched on, where we don't really have any definitive proof that it's worth changing the existing system. And so as you listen to the stories that you heard on your voicemail and read in your email, and the stories are really important, and they were so varied and compelling, and caused me to think about things that people might not get in the way of service if we had organized hauling. I'm not certain about that, but I know they're getting the service now, is the disabled couple that has the garbage man delivers the container right to their garage. Shane that feeds the dog and knows the dog's name. And the stories are just, they go on and on and on, and they're really compelling sorts of situations. And when I step back and look at all the stories, and I look at the threads, the common threads through everything, it's pretty much what folks up here have mentioned. Number one is choice. I mean, I'd say that the calls I got, the 30-some calls a day, choice was always there being expressed by people. They wanted that choice for themselves. They didn't want the government deciding who was going to be their hauler. People have mentioned free market. And we live in I'll call it managed capitalism, because we have a lot of regulations around capitalism, But nonetheless, in this particular situation, we know from our personal experience in our own town, our own little town here, that competition leads to better service and better rates. At least that's the economic theory, and I think it's in practice. You can hear it in the stories that are told, because there are countless stories that were related to all of us, where I tried X, and I tried them for a long time. I stuck with them when I bought my house. They were the carrier before, and I switched to Y, and I've been with Y for 17 years. I got better service and cheaper rates. There's no guarantee of that happening under organized hauling. People have mentioned, what about the little guy? We said this was Small Business Saturday coming up. And that's one thing I really worry about, is that over time, even if you have a 7-year contract, that over time the big people, the big dogs, can outweather the small carriers. And you have people out there that are smaller business people that are doing a fantastic job for their customers and trying to build their business. And why shouldn't they have a chance to build that business? Why shouldn't they have a big enough customer base to decide to buy that next new truck? And maybe that next new truck is much more energy efficient and produces fewer greenhouse gases. Or maybe we're heading towards electric, garbage trucks. I don't know the answer to that, but I know that I worry about small business people being affected over the long term by the big haulers. And they're in competition right now because they provide better service at lower prices, and people love them. And then we have what I would call the staffing issue. You know, right now nobody's paying for the city to have somebody that overlooks. We don't have a garbage czar. We've got somebody that works on it in the city hall, but we don't have somebody that's overseeing all these haulers and adding, let's say, $125,000 a year to the cost of everybody having their garbage picked up. I don't know how that allocates out per household, but it increases your rates. So I'm concerned about that as well. We don't need that now in this existing system, because if you're not getting the kind of service you want, you can switch. And you can look for a better carrier at a lower price. And that's the way this whole system is built. And that's what works. So I don't see any reason to change it. Now, it's not meaning that I don't see any reason to refine what we got, this open collection system. You've heard my colleagues say that there's things that need to be done here. You know, we could get more done. We still have a lot of resistance on composting. In our household, we went to composting right away. We didn't know anything about it. I hardly have any garbage anymore because we do the composting. We could get rid of 40% of all waste is compost, stuff that could go in the composting bin. If we could have a strategy around that and all agree that we're all going to work hard on that, that's probably one of the most effective things we could do. And then in terms of us sitting down, I like the idea of, I think it's been kind of baked into what people have been talking about, starting with Member Pierce on waste management solutions, sitting down with all of our carriers that serve our community, 6 or 7 of them, I think, and talking to them about how we can refine the systems that we have and make them more efficient and less impactful to people and their quality of life. But I join my colleagues, and I get what Member Agnew was talking about. There's just not sufficient data here for me to cause me to make a change from what we have now. And I think we'd be throwing out the baby with the bathwater, so to speak, if we did that. And so I think we should stick with what we got, and we should continue on and try to figure out ways that we can improve what we have without going to organized hauling. And I think you've got a pretty uniform opinion up here on all of that. And your input was really, as we mentioned earlier, really critical. And I'll just go back to our staff. I'd also, a year ago our staff said they didn't think this was a good idea. Am I paraphrasing that correctly or characterizing it?
No, that's correct. Andrew Scipione presented his staff report.
You didn't think it was a good idea.
Based on the ETC.
And in deference to the council, you said, and the other boards and commissions, you said, well, we'll stay neutral and take a look at it. So here we are taking a look at it and deciding that for our purposes, for our town right now, we want to stick with what we got and then refine and then make what we have better. And so what a laudable goal that is. And that's the direction we're all heading. So you can all head to the hilltop and have a drink.
So I agree with everything that you said. I just want to underscore the point that I made. The status quo doesn't mean we do nothing.
Right.
And so we all talked about things that we see that are challenges with hauling. In the emails we got, we see that as well. But when you're trying to create a change coalition for something like this, you got to start with defining what the sense of urgency is. And we have to do that on a grand scale. And we haven't done that yet sufficiently to get enough people to choose to do something different. And so to me, when I say status quo, that means we got to go back to work and figure out how to create that sense of urgency to go to your latter point, to then figure out what things do we want to do to impact change.
Yeah. Okay, so I think, let's see here. Let me look at this agenda. And so staff was requesting that we have a motion approving next steps for organized trash collection for single-family dwellings. And that's an open-ended sort of request on their part in terms of next steps. But I think you can understand from what you heard this evening that next steps does not mean starting through the legal process to organize trash collection. So is there a motion by one of my colleagues to a motion to stay as an open collection system in the city of Edina and work on refinements to that existing system? I'll put it that way.
So moved.
Is there a second? Member Pierce moves. Is there a second? I'll second it. Further discussion?
I think it's important that we explore some of the other things that other cities are doing, like having that textile collection and things like that. And so I would like this to be something where there is the implied purposeful action to help reduce garbage.
And I think we could direct that request to the appropriate commissions that do that work.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with that.
All right, okay. Other comments? All those in favor of adoption of the motion as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. We are going to stay with our open collection system and work on improving it. So thanks for being here this evening, folks. You got to see your city council at work. Maybe you've never been here before, and thanks for being here this evening.
I guess they were here for that.
What's going on here?
It's scary.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, sir, for coming up. All right, our next matter, we got folks clearing out of the council chambers that were interested in that issue. And now we're going to have a sketch plan review involving a piece of property at 4600 West 77th Street. And our Community Development Director, Carrie Teague, is going to introduce the topic, and the applicant presentation, I think folks have been advised you'll have 15 minutes to make the applicant presentation. And then we'll have a discussion about amongst council members and applicant about things that the council observes about the proposed project. So, Director Teague.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of council. The applicant is Seven Hills Academy Charter School. As mentioned, the property is located down in Pentagon Park. This property is part of the PUD 23. It was the second phase of the Fred Apartments. It is to be a 276-unit apartment with a small coffee shop or cafe within it. And one of the existing buildings was to remain. And the ordinance was specifically written to allow retail uses that are allowed in the PCD 1 district. So that remaining office building was going to be retail with office. The proposal is to remodel that structure to a K-5 charter school for about 550 kids with a gymnasium. So a formal application would require a zoning ordinance amendment to the PUD 23 that would allow schools currently not allowed in that zoning district. A site plan with variances. The gym would be located about 20 feet from the new entrance to the Fred Richards Park. So variance would be required for the location of the gym. Also, there's a drive aisle on the east side of the building that's located very close to the proposed gym. We require a 10-foot setback separation for drive aisle, so a variance would be needed there as well. Potentially building material. There's also one other big ask, but that is an ask of the HRA. One of the requirements in that request is to revise the 2014 TIF agreement. The property owner at that time in 2014 agreed to only sell to entities that pay property taxes. This is a charter school and would not pay property taxes. So that would violate that agreement. it would be a decision of the HRA to decide to amend that agreement. So with that, the Seven Hills team is here, and it's a large team. They'll all introduce themselves to present the details of the project.
All right, very good. Thank you, Director Teague, and welcome, folks. And I'll let you introduce your team, and you can tell us who's going to be presenting any particular aspect of it.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Carolyn Farrell, and I am the Executive Director at Seven Hills Preparatory Academy. This is Mr. Brent Peterson. He is the principal at our Bloomington campus. And tonight we have Bess McAuliffe. She is representing our architectural firm, Collaborative Design Group. Wanted to share a little bit about Seven Hills. We are a public independent school district. We are currently located in the city of Bloomington and Richfield, and we have been around for 17 years. Very successful public school system. We have currently the 2 sites, and at our Bloomington site we have 550 students, and at our Richfield site we have about 600 students. Our Bloomington site is K-5 and our Richfield is K-8. We have at our Bloomington facility currently about 50 families or 50 students that also reside in the Edina school district. We pull from the majority of the cities that we pull from are Richfield and Bloomington, and we also pull a small minority from the city of Edina. We're also a top credentialed school in terms of academic achievement, and we've received the National Blue Ribbon Award 2 years ago, and that's a federal status. Our goal here tonight is to move our organization to the city of Edina. We see it as a benefit not only for the school district, but also for the city. Moving our Bloomington campus to this Edina property at 4600 and 77th Street in Edina not only benefits, we love this property, we love this area, and we love how we can develop it. And Mr. Peterson's going to talk a little bit more about how we think we can develop more our access and engagement with the Fred Richards Park. But every day in and out of the school area, we would have over 300 of these families coming to and from the school. And I think that these families would bring a new energy to the area, and they would also be frequently accessing the local area. And so they might frequent the gas stations, the grocery stores, restaurants. So it would be bringing a new clientele into the area in and out each day. But next, Mr. Peterson is going to talk about how we can engage more the school in that area with the Fred Richards Park area, which is directly north of this property. And we're very excited about the structure that's going up there. So, Mr. Peterson.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Arrow. Thank you, council members, Mr. Mayor. We appreciate your time, your consideration, and feedback for the site proposal tonight. We are a classical education school, so civic engagement and community partnerships are super important to us and our students. It's central to building the next generation of civic leaders who, will one day, be taking our positions in that aspect. So I appreciate the opportunity tonight to model this public engagement here with you all for our students and our staff. The primary reason that this site stood out to us is really about that Fred Richards Park to the north. It's a brilliant space for a public elementary school, and the time, energy, resources that you and the city have committed to redeveloping that park is just super exciting and invigorating. We currently have a city park adjacent to the facility that we lease in Bloomington. We see ourselves as, the prime stewards of that park. We have students who volunteer their recess time to take trash bags out there and clean up the park. We have staff who have asked for those magic erasers to clean off some graffiti that shows up on the park, on the playground area. And we've connected with the park department or police and other situations, so we really see ourselves as stewards. The possibility of utilizing, the outdoor classroom space next to the wetlands, or the proposed yoga deck for a class performance in the park. It really could do wonders to showcase the array of functions that are kind of in the plans for that park. We think that students, young students, can bring an energy and activate the space in a way that sometimes us older folks just can't do. We would love to be considered as part of the addition to further diversify the uses in this area, and we thank you for your time and consideration tonight. I'm going to have Bess McCullough, from one of our architects, come up and go through some of our details next. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Peterson.
Good evening. I know you have all reviewed our packet, and I know that you've probably watched our presentation that we had last week at the Planning Commission. So I'm going to do actually the simplest thing, and I'm going to go to the problems that we have on the site and the things that we're asking for tonight, as opposed to going through the whole packet.
Okay, and just to make the record clear, would you identify yourself and your business address?
I'm Elizabeth McCullough. I'm the architect for the project.
And what's your business address?
Collaborative Design Group.
Okay.
Is that what you...
Yeah, and what's your street address?
Oh, I'm sorry. 125 Main Street, Minneapolis.
All right, thank you.
So we are asking for several things with this project, and as Mr. Teagues mentioned, the first one is that this property is currently zoned PUD 23. That is a new PUD. It came into being last September. So it is very new. And as part of that PUD, they changed, before that we were able to have an E-occupancy in this zoning. At that time it was changed. So our goal is to have the amendment made that we return the E-occupancy to the area of the zoning, to that area. We do want to let you know that the current owner of the building, Hillcrest, who also owns two buildings to the east, and then the owner of the Finch, which is currently under construction, Solheim, both of those neighbors are in agreement with this change of use, and we actually have met with them and we've gone over our designs with them, so they know what's happening on the site. Going to just a couple little things, the TIF master agreement. We are aware of the RDA exclusion and understand that both of our neighbors, neighboring properties, the Fred and the Finch apartment projects, were excluded from this agreement. We plan to go to the HRA to request the same outcome and to work with the city on a solution that works for everyone. Currently, we are, Mr. Smith, who is with me here, is working on getting onto the agenda. We hope before the end of the year to be able to discuss
Ms.
that.
McCullough, on what basis do you make the assertion that those other entities were exempt from the agreement?
That was our understanding in looking at the TIF. Is that not correct?
It's not correct, I don't think.
Those are tax-paying entities.
I don't know where we got that information. I apologize.
So, but let's make one thing clear.
Yes.
The school would be a non-tax-paying entity.
It would be.
Thank you.
Yes, yes. The first thing that we talked about and is under consideration is staff's concern about bus pickup and drop off in the Woolnerf that has just been designed. And we realize that there's been a lot of time on that design of both of those properties, the connection between the Finch and the 4600 building, and that surrounding property going back to the park. And because of our concern with making sure that we were very gentle on this site, we actually have brought Civil Site onto our team, and they are the civil engineer and the landscape architect for that original project, so they helped develop those sites. And our plan is to be very careful with what we're doing. They have gone over our bus circulation. We plan to be able to pull the buses completely off of the drive lane, and we've confirmed with a civil engineer that that is possible. We do also want to make clear that this is about 1.94% of the time that in a year that the buses would be on the street. It's about a half an hour to 45 minutes in the morning and the same in the afternoon. So we would not be blocking that lane for any fire vehicles or for people going into the Finch, which is right there.
Why don't you go into a little bit more detail on that, on the half hour to 45 minutes for pickup and drop off? How many buses do you use? What time of the morning do they come? What time of the afternoon do they pick up? That would be helpful.
I'm actually going to have the
Principal Peterson might be able to help us on that.
Yeah, absolutely. The morning drop-off actually goes really quickly. It's maybe 2 buses at a time. They drop kids and they go. So buses on site for maybe 3 minutes. So we never have stacking of buses in the morning. They come through and drop and go. It's the afternoon when buses arrive a little bit ahead of time. That we have 12 buses in total for our Bloomington site. One of those is shared with our Richfield site as well. But those buses, we usually have about 4 to 6 on site at a time. A couple of them get there before we dismiss. And to answer your question about time of day too, we start school at 8:40. Buses drop at 8:30. So 8:30 to 8:40 is a 10-minute window.
8:30 to 9 roughly in the morning then?
Yeah, and not even until 9 o'clock, but yeah.
And then in the afternoon?
And then afternoon, buses get there 3:30, maybe 3:25. When snow starts coming, it will be closer to 3:40. That's our dismissal time. And they're gone by 3:50, 3:55. Yeah, so it's about 20 minutes to a half hour on each side.
And then you said there were 300 families coming to the school every day. I think Farrell said that. So there are people picking up kids too. Not everybody's
Correct.
getting bused.
Yes, correct.
So you got 300 cars a day coming in addition to drop off and pick up?
No, not that many cars. About 60% of our students take the bus, and about 40% go through parent pickup and drop off. It's between 100 and 125 cars a day that come in and out.
AM and PM?
Yes, correct.
125 in each period?
Each time period, yep.
Okay, thank you.
And we have just to address that problem, we did actually chat with staff early on about our circulation on the site, and we have separated the parent drop-off and the bus drop-off to help simplify the circulation on the site. So the bus pickup and drop-off is on the west side between the Finch and the 4600 building, and the parent drop-off is on the other side of the site. And that is just to make sure that we can keep those separate and keep the kids safe. Additionally, one of the other concerns with staff was that we were encroaching. Our gym is in the setback on the east, and we are in the 10-foot. We are encroaching on the 10-foot setback between the building and the road. And the reason we have done that as a design feature, a couple things, it keeps all of or as much as we can, circulation of cars on the site. And it also is traffic calming. We will have staff out in the parking lot helping direct traffic of parent pickup and drop off, and that allows us to slow the traffic down as they're coming in. Additionally, we did listen to the commissioners and their concerns, and so since last week, we have taken a couple design actions. One of them is we're looking at where we might be able to put down some drop-down bars to ensure that we don't have parent traffic dropping into where the buses are or crossing other parent traffic just to avoid accidents. And we are looking at spots where we can very strategically placed staff. We already had some, but we were looking at that again. And additionally, we are working with the seller of the 4600 building. They own the the two buildings to the east of us, and we are looking at opportunities to be able to stack, if we cannot meet the stacking on the 4600 property, looking at opportunities to be able to stack elsewhere on their adjacent properties. The other consideration and discussion with staff was about the park entrance. This is a new park entrance. We realize that. We too want to make sure that park is activated, and if we hide it, we're not going to be able to do that. We understand that. What we have done is place the gym on the east side of the building, as far back as we can go before we get into an easement and the wetlands. This is not the preferred location of the reviewing architect. He would like us to come forward with that gym. My contention, our contention, is that if the gym were to come forward on the building, as you were driving down 77th and you are coming from heading east, you would not be able to see the park at all until you actually pass that drive. It really would block what is happening there. So we've chosen the position to the backside of the lot and have explored and are looking at having some green on the building, so living walls on this building. And the idea is, as you look down that lane, you've got the green park behind you, and then you've got our building wrapped in green as well. It is still a building, it is true, and it is going to block the view, but it is quite a bit more of an enhancement as you're looking back at the park, and I think it lessens the impact of the building in that site. Additionally, the commission asked about a traffic and parking study. We already had that underway. We had not hired that company, the city's company. That is happening today or tomorrow morning. So we have them underway and under contract, and they'll be helping us with the circulation around the site.
So, Ms. McCullough or Mr. Peterson, so the study that you've done so far and the design work you've done is based on your existing student population and the people you have coming to the Bloomington School.
Yes.
And so what's your existing population, student body population?
We have about 540 students currently.
Okay. And what's the capacity of this building for you adding more students, and how many, and if so, how many?
We would probably be at about 10% over that, and still be meeting our life safety codes for the occupancy.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
I should note that because they're moving and because this is a school and it happens when these things happen with families, they are not anticipating that all those students will come with them. They anticipate a majority of the students will, but we feel that number may fluctuate a little bit, at least in the first year or so, come down a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
And I notice I'm out of time. Would you like me to, I can stop and we can go on to questions?
Yeah, well, if you had some other portion of the presentation you want to finish?
I do have a couple other things. In particular, I do want to address one of the other asks that we have for this site. And we know that the city has recently, in the last few years, implemented a sustainability policy. And we want to be really clear. There was a miscommunication with staff. It is not our intent to ask for relief from that policy completely. However, this is an existing building, and my company and I have made our careers out of working in restoration, rehabilitation, and adaptive reuse of buildings. We think it's the most sustainable way to approach a project. Additionally, the building is interesting. Might not be everybody's cup of tea, but it's got a very interesting construction. So our approach here is that we would use best practices, that this would be a building that has the highest efficiency HVAC. We would be using occupancy sensors to make sure our lights are not on all the time, low flush toilets, basically everything that a good designer should be doing anyway, and that we do in new buildings. We just would not, with this building, be able to either do LEED or B3, which are the two sustainability approaches that we could have on the project. That being said, we want to be clear that we do think sustainability is important, and we do embrace that as the design system. And so our approach would be that we would be using the sustainability standards. We would be using B3, and we would use that approach on the gym. The gym itself does have, is a little bit interesting to the site, and it does play a little bit into the sustainability and a little bit into the building materials requirements for the city. Schools are required to have a storm shelter, and so the gym would function as the storm shelter in this building. We're not capable of doing that inside the building. And in doing so, our windows would be a little smaller than you might normally see with your building standards and material standards. We would be doing a precast building with living walls and having masonry around the front portion of the building. So we would be complying there, but yeah, we really do want to speak to the sustainability. We know that we are the first building, is our understanding, that we are the first building that is an existing building that has gone through this process, is what we were told from the sustainability group in the city. So those are really our comments, and we appreciate your letting us talk to you about this project, and we would love to answer any questions that you have.
Yes, thanks, Ms. McCall. And I'm going to turn to Member Risser, I think, let her lead off.
Yes, and in going over this proposal, I did have concerns about the impact on Fred Richards Park, and I would like to see a couple images. I've asked Director Teague to make those available. First is an overarching image of the master plan, which shows the park and the access drive. Okay. And you can see at the bottom there where we do have the access road onto the park. And I don't know if you are familiar with the fact that this is the only car access road to Fred Richards, and that most of Fred Richards is surrounded by private property.
Yes.
And so you are aware of that?
We are aware of that.
Okay.
Yep.
When we went to the legislature to ask permission to have a referendum on the ballot to fund Fred Richards, we did not tell people that that access road, and this is a really important point because it is challenging to figure out how to get that in place. And from the north, I mean, there's a bike path, but you can't have a car go on that. And so my big concern here is that our credibility is on the line. We did not present this as an access road and a parent drop-off route, a bus route, all of that. And although you can say it's only going to be a problem, you know, for a short period of time. And now if we could go to the other image that shows the detail here. Our plan is to have a clubhouse type structure. We've also got pickleball courts. We've got all kinds of things there. And, you know, I can certainly imagine at the same time you're doing your drop-off, our community may want to have meetings, you know, breakfast meetings or, you know, all kinds of things. And this is going to impact what we can do at our clubhouse. When we put this, and then we got permission from the legislature to put this on the ballot, and then we went to the residents of Edina with these images, at no point did we say we would also be reaching out to other entities and the main access route would be something that would be shared. and you are proposing a very intense use. And so I feel like what you are asking is for us to risk our credibility with the legislature, with the residents of Edina, and also this is supposed to be the reason we got permission to go forward with this referendum was because this was billed as a regional asset. So we do have this bike path that goes through it. And I really feel that what you are proposing will compromise that essential need that we have. And I know this is a sketch plan. Talking about TIF is not necessarily appropriate, but the other image that I wanted was showing the distribution of property taxes. I don't know if that, anyway, we don't really need to look at that, but, you know, when we talk about, oh, we're just going to change this TIF requirement that was put in place back in 2014, this is going to have an impact on how much money is going to go to Edina Public Schools, how much money is going to go to our city, to Hennepin County, we don't need it, to Hennepin County, and to the watershed. And so, and I want to ask Director Teague, have we ever had somebody come forward with a project that does not generate property taxes on any part of this district ever before?
Within the Pentagon Park
Yes,
district?
has that ever happened?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so this is a first. And I really think it's way too much, and I really think it is a betrayal of expectations that people have. I also feel as an elected official, I have a fiduciary responsibility, and I really don't think that this is something that I can support.
Thank you, Member Risser. Member Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I'd like to echo my colleagues' sentiments. You're asking for a lot, and I don't see a lot of benefit. We have put tremendous resources into Fred Richards Park, and I just don't see the benefit of putting a school, especially when that is the entranceway. And the work that we had to do to get that entranceway, I'm not willing to cede that to a private use. So those are my comments.
Copy of Ms. Strider. Go ahead, Member Pierce.
Thank you. So this is a tough one for me because I actually like the idea of there being a school there. But all of the challenges that you've already outlined and the challenges that my colleagues have raised are legitimate. But I do like the idea of having a school there, especially I think it's K through 5. When we talk about activation, we talk about the proximity to the park. And so I like that. But I think there are significant challenges. And so I think what I would want to do is to just make sure we understand, and this is partially to you, Carrie, just understanding what all the challenges are. And it's beyond just the table that's in there. I mean, this isn't about setbacks.
No,
right?
no, the challenges are many.
Yeah. And I think I would love to make sure we understand all of those, and then make a run at how could we address those, and then have the conversation of, to Member Risser's point, how would we, if we go through all of those and we have a way forward, and we'd like to have a school be there, how could we move forward? And we may find out that we can't. right? Because of some of the challenges, maybe we can actually address some of them. But sitting here today, I actually don't know that. And so I'm giving you the hard answer, which is I kind of think it would be cool to have a school there. I think I've said that 4 times. And so that's what I think that's what I would offer as a next step, to really make sure we understand all the challenges that are before us and articulate, is there a way to address those issues that would be satisfactory to the council?
Thanks, Member Pierce. Member Agnew.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm trying to find a way to echo all of the former members' comments without explicitly just saying the same thing. I think the part of it that I'm struggling with the most falls under the proposed use. And it's coming at a conflict because I love schools and I love having something in this part of the city in particular. And at the same time, when we were looking at this development, we talked about retail, we talked about different things that would draw people to this area and create more of that community feel. And I don't know that a school does that. We're not creating a gathering location for people outside of those who are students that would be attending. And so that's the part of it that I'm trying to navigate, is having a vision for this site and then trying to understand what would that, or how does that change if it were to be a school. And then as I go through kind of the list of the other, considerations and complications with the site too, I have concerns about the number of exceptions that would need to take place. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Agnew. So let's talk a little bit about the gymnasium and what kind of events you hold at the gym now, because I think one of the things we all kind of worry about is the traffic flow, the parking. Mm-hmm. You got an event and you got a little grade school basketball tournament, and now people are coming from all over the place, and they're going to, I think it's inevitable, they'll park in the park. Where we're intending to have people park that are using the park, and now there's no place to park in the park because everybody's in there for the basketball, And maybe you make arrangements with Seagate across the street on a Saturday morning, and you can use their parking. I don't know the answer to that, but you're going to see a lot of concerns, and you've heard a lot of concerns here, both from a staff level and the Planning Commission level and this council, about traffic flow and parking. And I think it's really something we're really sensitive about, because we know what the purpose of this is, as Member Risser was so articulate in expressing, and that is to build essentially a park on the west side of France Avenue that somewhat mimics what we have in Centennial Lakes.
Right.
A place where there are abundant uses of active and passive spaces. Mm-hmm. And people are going to want to be there. And when they come there, we want them to be able to park there. Mm-hmm. And we don't want this school that, whether it's somebody that's a parent of a school person or it's somebody coming with bringing their kid to play in a little basketball tournament, and they decide, well, there's all this parking right in the park. So I think that traffic study is going to be really important mm-hmm. for you to think about. And those are the things that give us pause. And Mr. Peterson, you may have a comment on this, and maybe you don't use it except internally. I don't know. But it strikes me that if you got a gym that's 6,000 square feet or whatever it is, you're going to be using it. Try to use it.
Well, yeah, mostly our gym right now for K-5 elementary, we're using just for PE classes. But our two sites work pretty differently. Our Richfield site works on on a much tighter, smaller site like this proposed site here. So when we do like our spring music concert, we do that K5, and we have the parking lots we have at our current site are almost endless, and so we do big school events for a couple of things. But at the Richfield campus, they hold much smaller events, and we've talked about if you do like a K1 music concert and then a 2-3, right? You can break up your events so that you're not having 1,000 people come to one event. I think the parking has been been a challenge for me to wrap my mind around. And I think about the park, for like a Saturday afternoon pickleball tournament. In the proposed site plans, when I look at the amount of parking there, it might need overflow parking too, right, from the sites. So I always felt like, oh yeah, there might be things at the park that will need extra parking if we were on this site, and then maybe there's a time on a Tuesday night that like at 7 o'clock that the park isn't going to be used that much, right? It's dark. People aren't going to be out there in the winter time using the pickleball courts. So it felt to me like there was maybe some way to do some collaboration, but we're, of course, we would again want to be partners with everyone in the area. So that's kind of how we think about utilizing the space.
Okay. Personally, I got to think about the PUD not allowing school use. I got to understand why we did that. It's not an issue for you. That's just a land use issue. I am concerned about the fact that we would have this member Rissa raises, a non-tax-paying entity becoming a use in the established TIF district, because and where member Rissa was heading was not only what is the existing tax on that building, but how that tax for that building fits in the overall scheme of our tax increment financing strategy for all of Pentagon Park. I don't know if it's important or not, but it strikes me on the face of it that it's probably something we need to think carefully about, to be able to all of a sudden say, okay, we're going to exempt you out of this when we're relying on having as healthy a TIF district as we can to be able to make sure that those obligations are repaid. So that's something that we have to figure out. And then the last thing was, I noticed in that report of Mick Johnson's, he was talking about how you had followed the Greater Southdale District Plan and looking at urban elements, but he thought that you hadn't looked carefully enough at the design experience guidelines, and I'm interested in your observations on his observations.
Another
and
architect, an architect talking about an architect.
I don't care if you agree with him or disagree with him, but.
Actually, the ideas, we had reviewed those, and the ideas in there are fabulous, but they don't translate everywhere, and that would be my comment. He, talking about enlivening the street front here, we have 45 feet from the curb edge to the face of the building. That's huge. We were never going to build down farther than that because that is in the easement. I realize I'm going to the east in an easement, but we weren't going to get crazy with going into the earth setbacks. But I think when you have the Finch, which is quite tall, and then you are stepping down to those moderate-sized buildings that are already there. So the 4600 building and the two buildings to the east. They are 3-story buildings. They are quite quaint in their makeup. They're inviting buildings in a way that, although the Finch is beautiful and it's going to be brand new and we're going to love it for that, they are not going to be that. They are going to be this place that you want to walk up to, and coming down and bringing the gym to the face of the street prohibits that. It closes off the site. I love the ideas of glass and the materiality of that and the transparency of that. However, not every building should be glass. It just shouldn't. I mean, there are places where that's appropriate and places where that isn't. And I think a gym added to this very mid-century, modern, quaint building is not the place to have a face full of glass. And I know, I understand completely how he got there. I just think that in this particular instance, those are not well translated onto the site.
Okay, all right. And did part of his report explore the notion of the gym being on the north side of the building?
No, he wants it on the south.
On the south?
He wanted
next
it
to
right
77th?
He wanted it right at 77, right at the south face of the building.
All right. Okay. And you had, I noticed in the back, on the north side, you got 100 feet of setback there from on the rear setback.
So we actually had explored other spots for the gym, and I think it was a matter of picking the spot that was the least constraint and caused the least problem for many things. So at the north part of the site, we have a fire lane easement at the very north. That's right next to the parking that is abutting the park. And then we have parking, and then we have an additional easement, and that is a property easement between the Finch and the 4600 building. So those are no building zones. So we had contemplated having the building detached and putting it in the north side of the building, and where that main parking is. Unfortunately,
where it says option 3 there?
Yep. And unfortunately, that is a floodplain, 100-year floodplain. And Civil Site and the group in their development of the site for the PUD for this whole development did extensive work with the watershed, and that was about as bad of a plan as you could get to. It just really was, yeah, that would have been a real push to get through. We are at the north site where we are. We've got about 2% of the floodplain that is on our site. We have encroached on that, and we are making up for that encroachment by adding extra green space back at the park. So we've actually increased the green buffer between our site and the park.
And was your argument on option 2 for the gym location that it actually blocked more of the park view?
I do think it does, yes.
Than having it where you were proposing to put it, which is the northeast corner?
Right. If you're coming down, it doesn't really do anything to somebody heading west on 77 because you get the park entrance and you see the view back to the park before you get to the gym location. But if you're coming east, if you're heading east, if the gym is at that southern location, you actually are blocked till you're you're right at the turn-in. I think that would be a great opportunity to just miss the park completely, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. I get your argument there. Okay, you got a lot to think about. You do too.
Yes.
So, hope that was helpful.
We greatly,
remember Pierce has some other thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So I would just encourage you, I'm going to kind of repeat what I said earlier. It's really easy with these things to just start drilling into how we're going to park, where is the gym going to be, and what's the facade's going to be, are we going to do this living wall or not? And those are great things to talk about, but you have a proposed use challenge, you got a challenge on TIF, the exemption that we talked about, and then you got the fact that we made a commitment to the community about how we're going to use that park. Those 3 things, and there may be some other things, and so I would encourage you to get with Director T, understand what those few things are, and then spend some time even thinking about whether we're going to be able to address those. And if the answer is, yeah, we probably can come up with a way to do it, then go forward. Because if you don't do that, you're going to come to the HRA, and I kind of think we're probably going to say the same thing if we don't have answers to some of those things. So I'm just offering that guidance before you wrap up and walk out tonight.
Well, I know it's not easy to say stuff that people don't want to hear, but you all did it so lovely. I appreciate that. We really do appreciate your comments and being here. And I do want to say Carrie has been extremely helpful and very honest about our struggles and really helping us understand what those are. So we've appreciated his help. So thank you very much.
Yeah, one other question for the principal. So tell us about your enrollment. Where are the kids from?
I think as Ms. Farrell said, most of our kids are Bloomington, Richfield residents.
Okay.
But we have about 40 families that come from Edina. So, we did some surveys with families about, where we would end up and how many families would come with us. We had about 90% of families who said, oh yeah, Edina, that works for us. So we would be bringing Bloomington, Richfield residents, even some Burnsville, Lakeville residents to the area. So that was part of the idea too.
And then continue to serve the existing Edina residents that you serve.
Yes, correct. And probably over time, as families, there's so many new dwelling units, right, going up there, young families, right, if they're looking for schools that are walkable in their neighborhood, then we think it, like you had mentioned, the location there near those highways, 100 and 494, that might work really well for families coming from a variety of communities.
And it's K through 5?
K through 5, correct.
All right. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
How's your evening there, Mr. Mayor?
Feel good, Mr. Mayor. Nice to be on this side of the table. Take care. Thank you.
All right. Commission correspondence, I think we can jump right by that. And then the manager's comments.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have two things for you tonight. The first one is pretty quick, just to point you towards the Q3 quarterly financial report, and also the progress portal update was included in this council packet, and there's a lot of interesting information there, kind of put together in a very understandable way. So if you have any questions or comments about that, please let me know. The second item is we titled it Future of Operated Assisted Calls for Public Meetings. And there isn't anything you have to do with this, but I just wanted you to see kind of what we see with our operated assisted calls. We've taken just a quick snapshot from kind of late July to late October to give you a sense of what it costs to provide this service and how many people take advantage of it. So, we had a city council meeting on September 19th that was, we had 11 callers at a total cost of $819. We had a city council meeting where nobody called and it cost us $819. And we had an August 2nd meeting where we had one person call and it was $819. At some point, we're interested in hearing from you whether you think that's a good value for money. If you do, we'll stay where we are. If you don't, there are some other options that we can pursue, including WebEx and doing something a little less formal, perhaps, that costs as much as this costs. So
the inference isn't, if this is too expensive, we stop doing hybrid meetings. You look for an alternative, more cost-effective sort of method of being able to continue hybrid meetings?
I'm guessing that's what you will settle on, right?
I'm guessing that's right.
Yeah. So that's not, that wasn't our cause or the reason for this presentation tonight. It was just to get a sense of whether that number seems significant to you or doesn't seem significant to you. Do you want us to pursue something a little less formal than what we already have?
So during the process of coming up with this methodology, did you look at doing it in-house, having somebody here and they take calls on a dedicated line and then they feed them into you? And I mean, is we reached the point where that's more efficient and cost effective, or what are some of the other things it could do?
During the COVID-19 pandemic, we started using this service because it's what the state of Minnesota was using at the exact same time, and we were under their contract. Since 2020, these companies have boomed up, they got really big, and then they contracted really fast. And the company that we've used has been bought and sold 4 times, most recently in July. That's why we have the numbers from July going forward, because at that time, the state of Minnesota said, we're not going to do this anymore. They're just using WebEx now. So we could do the same. We could just use WebEx. It would mean that I bring people in and promote them to speak and then demote them to just listen again. It's a little clunkier for the user, honestly, than working with an operator. But if the cost is a concern and we want to continue to offer that ability to call in, very viable option.
Okay. Do you need any further information from us right now? Just a FYI?
FYI.
Okay.
And that's all I have tonight. Thanks.
Okay. I'm going to go down to, I think we started with Member Risser last time. I'm going to go to Member Agnew. Let her start it off and roll down the line.
Thank you. I don't have anything tonight, though, except for, maybe I'll just share that I'm so thankful for working with all of you here on the City Council. At work today, I'm taking tomorrow off, and so I was emailing my team how thankful I was for everything that they did, and I'm also thankful for all of you. So that's it. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had one thing, unless something else comes to mind while I'm talking. We've had a pretty exciting kind of high school or Edina sports week, right? And so the high school, shout out to the football team. I think most people were surprised that that happened. But if you look at their record, like they lost 3 games earlier in the season, and then after that third loss, they've had a pretty good track record. They've won every game since then. And so I think the championship is is this Friday. Yeah, this Friday night. So shout out to them. And then this is a personal shout out. The Edina dance team had their first meet. It's in Albertville today, actually. And Caitlin is on the Edina dance team. And so I've seen that group of girls practicing hard, and they are athletes for sure. They have to do all of these workout routines and send them in to the coach to make sure they're doing the burpees right and the sit-ups, and it's pretty intense. And so they had their first meet. I don't know how well they did today, but shout out to them. And there's probably some other sports teams that are kind of gearing up, but those are the 2 that I was going to highlight. And then the last thing I mentioned, I mentioned this earlier, I was in Alabama last meeting, and I was able to watch the city council meeting from there. And so that was fun. I was actually watching that, and my sister got a little peek at it too. So those systems work, and I thought you all did a wonderful job. But I will say it looked kind of funny with Kate sitting here, and it seemed like we weren't using the space evenly. But everybody did a good job, and it was easy to not being here to just stay up on the conversation. So I thought that was pretty cool. And happy Thanksgiving. That's it.
Member Jackson.
Girls swimming, state champions 6 of the last 7 years. unbelievable. I was watching the results come in, and it's just what a great effort by those girls, and congratulations to them. That was just super exciting. Last week has been Small Business Week. We went, Mr. Mayor was there, we went to the Body GI Consultants. If you remember, it's an outpatient center that we approved the zoning for, and they're open for business, and they had a big open house, beautiful facilities, and great crowd. I just couldn't believe the number of people that were there, so that's an exciting thing. And then we went to the opening of the Innovation Center, which is another project that the City of Edina and the Spark Funds have gone towards, and that's a beautiful space, and it was fun to see all the people who'd been through the innovation program and how inspiring their stories were. So that was really cool. And but yeah, go Hornets.
Thank you. Member Risser.
Well, I want to say this last Sunday was World Day of Remembrance for road traffic victims, and we had our event at the St. Paul Capitol, and we did get a little press, but I came with copies of our proclamation, and there were people who were from different cities who tend to show up every year, and so I distributed to different cities and really encouraged them to take action. So that felt really good. So maybe there'll be more municipal proclamations marking that event. Thank you.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving, everybody here on the dais with us, and also out in watching us on television. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you. I love the idea of having the girls swimming and the girls soccer teams here some night to celebrate them a little bit in front of the community and get some photos taken. So maybe you can put that on the to-do list.
We'll ask 'em.
And any other sports champions that we've missed. You know, there might be a golfer here or a tennis player there that we want to celebrate. So let's see if we can get them in here. The sports thing, I thought, that was really a great reminder. So on Friday, the day of the football game against Eden Prairie, that beat us by 23 points, I think, in the first game of the year, I get a text from the mayor of Eden Prairie. Oh, how about a friendly wager? You know, I think he's in a catbird seat, and he says, how about lunch? Yeah. You buy me lunch at my favorite restaurant in Eden Prairie, and blah, blah, blah. So I wrote back and I said, how about pie instead? And so then he's down at the National League of Cities meeting in Atlanta, and then that night after the game, I get this congratulations text, and I'll be glad to buy you a piece of pie. And I wrote back, I think I said, where did you see piece of pie in what I wrote to you? I'm going to find the best pie store, and I think there might be one up in St. Louis Park, and get a pie that he'll pay for. And I tried to get Stacy, the superintendent, looped in on it, but she said she already owed the superintendent in Eden Prairie lunch from the first game. So, and then, so Friday night they'll play Centennial, and I intend to go back. I was at the game, and it looked like half the town of Edina was there, and over on the Eden Prairie side, it was fairly thin. And I got chewed out because I went over, my wife and I and one of our other residents were there, and we were having a hot dog, and someone said, hey, Mayor, you're on the Eden Prairie side. You better get out of here. In a polite way, not just kind of a pokey fun way. You know, it was, so we went over to the other side, and it was unbelievable how many people were there. And they're so well coached, and there's really a great bunch of young guys, it seemed to me. So wish them all the best on Friday night. Upcoming state championship. First time we've been there, I think the last time they won, if memory serves me, it was 1980. I think Scott Hausch, who was on the city council with me, was the quarterback for the only other team in Edina that's won the state football championship. And then the Edina Foundation had an event last weekend too, a little fundraiser wine tasting thing with showing the old movie Bottle Shock, when California shocked the world in the French wine competition, a blind tasting, and a Chardonnay from California won the blind tasting, and it was, I forgot what a cute movie it was, so that was fun. And then don't forget Saturday, we've got that Christmas tree lighting at 4:30, right in front of Fairdy's there at 50th and France. And then yesterday, we have that photo, Jennifer, is that? Yesterday morning, I went down to Chicago with the head of the regional chamber for Minneapolis, Jonathan Weinhagen, and I went down for the Chinese American Chamber of Commerce gala. They asked me to come down. I was there last year, and you remember that I was on a panel last year with mayors from Illinois, Ohio, and Wisconsin, and there it is. So Member Jackson will recognize the person on the far right. The moderator is a woman from the U.S. Heartland China Association named Min Fan. Then next to her is the former governor of Iowa, Terry Branstad, who was the longest-serving governor in Iowa history. Twice he served. And then he was the U.S. ambassador to China. Next person is the president of Illinois Technical Institute. And then the mayor pro tem from Kansas City, me, and then mayor of Elkhart, Indiana. And so we were on this panel together yesterday afternoon. Then they had a banquet last night. It was real interesting. I sat down and my dinner companion said that we met the U.S. ambassador from China to the United States. He was there, and we had a small meeting with him, with the mayors and some other officials. And then when I went into dinner, they had this head table that was like 60 feet long. And they said, oh, you're at the head table with a bunch of other people. And so anyway, on each side of me, I had to my right, I had the president of the Bank of China, U.S. operations. He was an interesting guy. And then it was consul from Chicago, and then it was a guy who's the head of the China Institute in New York. So there were interesting conversations to be had, and it was a great experience. And thinking about this sort of subnational diplomacy, we had 6 mayors that were just over there, including Kim Norton from Rochester, who had a terrific experience at a subnational level. So as we think about the sort of global issues that are going on and the tension with China, we've got to keep in mind that diplomacy will serve us well at a geopolitical level or a subnational level. And those mayors made a good impression, I think, over in China. So we'll continue about having some conversations around that, and that's it for me. That prompt anybody else to think of anything else they wanted to talk about?
I forgot to wish everybody happy Thanksgiving, and I'm thankful for all of you.
Yeah. All right. Great. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Member Jackson moves to adjourn. Member Agnew seconds the adjournment of the City Council meeting this Tuesday, November 21st, 2023. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adjournment of the City Council meeting this Tuesday, November 21, 2023, say aye. 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 Opposed? Carried. We stand adjourned.